an incident, are you able to help? And then no further contact after saying, well, call me. And that seems to be about as far as it went. So in those circumstances, I'm satisfied it in no way affects at all his independence in this inquiry, but I thought it appropriate to mention it now. And if there are any issues, they can be raised with me. If anyone needs to know to what extent there is any documentary support for any of that, I can point them through my secretary in that direction. But I'm satisfied it in no way affects his independence. So that's the first thing. The second thing is rather more problematic, I'm afraid, and it is this, that we will not be sitting tomorrow. The reason why we won't be sitting tomorrow is because I have had to make a decision about preparedness for this inquiry. That includes having in our possession all the material that we need in order to carry out this inquiry. I'm rescheduling the witnesses for tomorrow so that we have them starting on Wednesday. What has happened is this. Paria, or their team, have been asked to provide a number of documents over a period of time. During the course of this weekend, and as late as 4 o'clock this morning, we were provided with what is on any view hundreds and hundreds of pages. It looks what the Americans call a document dump. This, handed to us in the course halfway through this inquiry, when we have been seeking this material for months, so that there could be no misunderstanding about it. This inquiry was announced on the 22nd of April of this year. It is inconceivable that those who are responsible for providing material to this inquiry could not have appreciated that this material was likely to be relevant. We get it this weekend, notwithstanding the fact that we have asked for it on numerous occasions. On the 19th of July, we wrote to Paria asking for all of the material that they were obliged to provide. That's ignoring the fact that they already must have appreciated for a period of 3 months that they were likely to need to provide this material. On the 6th of September, they asked for and were granted standing so that the lawyers who are now here, and I don't in any way hold them responsible for this, they will know what inquiries have or have not been made. And this is not intended to upbraid anybody. I'm simply making the observation. On the 6th of September of this year, they asked for and were granted standing. So the lawyers from that date became involved. Rule 16 makes it absolutely clear that they must provide, that is, their clients must provide everything in their possession and control having any bearing on the subject matter of this inquiry. Clearly, they did not, since we've got this over the weekend. That was followed by a specific request about this very material on the 8th of November, when we wrote to them asking for it to be provided, by the 11th of November, bearing in mind where we were in relation to this inquiry. Nothing happened. On the 11th of November, they asked for an extension. They were granted an extension to the 17th of November. On the 15th of November, they sought a further application for a further extension. They got a further extension to the 22nd of November. On the 22nd of November, having promised to give it to us, they didn't. On the 23rd of November, when they promised to give it to us, they didn't. On the 24th of November, when we wrote to them asking them where is it, we were promised we would get it the next day. We didn't. On Sunday, the 4th, they indicated they were putting together their ICT records to send to us by email. They didn't. Today, or rather on the 6th, I should say, we asked once again, and we were told that we would get it by that Friday. They did not provide it. So what we have is the very first time we got anything from them at all in relation to this was during the course of Friday. We got nothing further on Saturday, and we got more on Sunday, and I still don't know if we have it all. This is not acceptable. I will not permit our legal team, or indeed any of the other legal teams, to have to present their cases half-cocked. Because that's where we are at the moment, because I haven't been able to read it, Mr. Wilson hasn't been able to read it, and most of our team, notwithstanding their best efforts, have not been able to assimilate or read it. We can't provide it to everybody else because it needs redacting. There are phone numbers and names and things like that are in there. So it's not right that the other teams should not have this material before principal witnesses from Paria are called. So, we will not sit tomorrow so that I and others can read this material so that we know what's there. They include the IMT records. On Wednesday morning, we will hear from Catherine Balkisoon. After her, we will hear from Colin Piper. He will almost certainly go into Thursday. And on Thursday, we will hear from Mushtaq Mohammed. Those are the last three witnesses that we will hear before Christmas. We will get through them. If it means sitting till late, I don't care. We will sit until they have been heard this side of Christmas. The other witnesses, Archbold, Fuentes, Yearwood and Fleming Holder, will have to be heard next year. I apologise to them for inconveniencing them, having been told that they were going to be required this week. It's not fair on them as witnesses, and it's not fair on us. Anyway, I don't propose to say anything more about it. That is what will happen. If, and beyond that, I'll make this observation. If there is any more, please, Mr. Peterson, if there is any more, can we have it today?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll make inquiries, but I know that a lot of WhatsApp messages were sent over the weekend. IT material. I know initial, I don't have all the details now, I can inquire from my team, but I know that there was some difficulty with loading it onto a jump drive and an external drive. I know there were those difficulties, and also there was some scrutinizing for doing the same thing you said, which is respect to redacting irrelevant material that has nothing to do with the inquiry on persons' personal information and that kind of thing. So that was back and forth, I know. But I didn't realize it.
All of that, Mr.
But I'll make inquiries.
All of that would be okay if we were talking about August. Yeah. We're in December. This has to have been available. This isn't new material. This has to have been available to your clients since it happened. This isn't something that's just arisen in the recent weeks. This is contemporaneous material. The ICT knows. They must have had it. I mean, look, I don't want to apportion blame anywhere. What upsets me, as you will obviously have understood, is that we have lost a day as a result. And I don't know whether, for example, Mr. Way, who's already given evidence, I see that he's involved in this, obviously, he may have to be recalled because there's material here that we want to deal with Mr. Way. And it's not fair on him as a witness for me to make conclusions with Mr. Wilson at the end of this that he hasn't been given an opportunity to deal with, which is now being provided to us. It's just simply not acceptable. And you don't need me to tell you this, Mr. Peterson. You've done many of these yourself, I know. And it is not an acceptable way to proceed. It may be that for some reason or other people thought this was going to be an inquiry that could be conducted at a leisurely pace over several years. Well, that's not what was happening. It never was what was happening, which is why I set a very strict timetable at the outset. And, I don't know whose fault this is, but it's somebody's fault. I don't really care at this stage. What I want to do is to make sure that we have all of the material that is necessary for us to conduct this inquiry without anybody being able to say later on, well, you didn't have this or didn't have that. So that's where we are at the moment, all right? We will not sit tomorrow. We will deal with the witnesses that we have arranged for today in the hope that there's nothing here that will impact on any of them. and proceed to spend the day tomorrow reading the material that we have now been provided with. All right? Unless there's anything else anybody else wants to say, I propose that we get on with the first witness. Right, good. Let's do that, please. I think it's Mr. Sitaram, is it not?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. He's at volume 1, page 395, and Ms. Vijaya Maharaj will do the summary.
Thank you. Where might I find him?
395.
Volume 1?
1.
395, thank you.
I, Alvin Sitaram,
Solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that the evidence
I shall give
to the Commission
to the Commission
in this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Good morning, Mr. Sitaram.
Pleasant morning.
Thank you for coming. What's going to happen is that Miss Maharaj sits in the middle of the row opposite you, is going to summarise your evidence, all right? Listen carefully, please. Make sure that she's getting it right. If there's anything you disagree with, let us know. And then once that's done, do you have any questions, Mr. Maharaj?
Yes.
You do. So there'll be a few questions to be asked of you afterwards by Mr. Maharaj, and then the other counsel who are here may want to ask you some questions, all right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Alvin Sitaram was interviewed by the Commission. The Commission prepared a witness statement based on that interview, and Mr. Sitaram signed his witness statement on the 31st of October. His witness statement is in the witness statement bundle at page 395. Mr. Sitaram is a ship captain at Subsea Global Solutions Limited, an international ship serving and maintenance company. He is the captain of Waterworld, which is an 85-foot vessel owned by Subsea Global Solutions. On Friday, 25th February, at about 4 p.m., Mr. Sitaram received a telephone call from Ronald Ramata seeking assistance to rescue 5 divers who had been sucked into a 30-inch pipeline at berth number 6, Pointe-a-Pierre. Mr. Sitaram stated that at the time of receiving the call, he was on board Waterworld, which was involved in a job at the Point Lisa's anchorage. Mr. Sitaram informed Mr. Ramata that he needed permission from Subsea's management. When he called back Mr. Ramata, he indicated that management had given permission to render assistance to the divers. This assistance included the use of Subsea's vessel and their topside connected diving equipment, which included diving helmets equipped with communication and lighting with surface supply air. However, Mr. Sitaram said that management indicated that none of Subsea's divers were to go into the pipeline. Mr. Ramata indicated that he had divers certified to use Subsea's diving equipment at the incidents. Mr. Sitaram stated that the Subsea's team arrived at the site at around 7:15 p.m. Paria gave them permission to proceed to berth number 6. At berth number 6, he recalled seeing other diving companies and vessels. At about 8:45 p.m., Mr. Sitaram recalled seeing another vessel believed to be operated by hull support, and he also saw a Coast Guard vessel. A team of 5 to 6 Coast Guard divers in scuba gear came on board the Waterworld vessel and inspected some of their diving equipment. Mr. Sitaram received information from Mr. Ramata that permission had been given by Paria to connect the flanges of the pipeline and to install a blank on the pipeline to allow the insertion of a camera in the pipeline to allow for surface video monitoring. Mr. Sitaram explained that this job of connecting the pipeline to permit surface video monitoring was done by Conan Bido and Mr. Ramata, and they were assisted by Subsea's Adam Hollier, using Subsea's surface supply equipment and his diving suit camera to provide a live source to Ronald and Mr. Ramata. The video footage taken of the pipeline was taken by the robotic camera operated by Paria. The Coast Guard divers left the Waterworld vessel when Ronald, Conan and Adam came to the surface, and some returned to the Coast Guard vessel and some went on to berth number 6. At about 3:30 a.m., when no further requests were made of subsea, they sought permission from Paria to leave berth number 6. However, permission was not granted until about 5 a.m. on the morning of Saturday, the 26th February, as Paria wanted them to remain on standby, as it was still coming up with a rescue plan. Mr. Sitaram, do you agree with that summary of your evidence?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Maharaj.
Mr. Sitaram, I just have one or two questions for you. You said that you had on board diving equipment and lighting material for diving.
Fully equipped.
Available to be used.
Correct.
And you also stated in your witness statement that the Coast Guard, some Coast Guard of divers, came on board and inspected your equipment, your diving equipment.
Correct.
And am I correct to say, well, could you give us an idea of what equipments you had, if you could describe them for us?
We have super lights, band masks, that is helmets. We have diving umbilicals. We have high pressure, low pressure, backup air supply. Umbilicals length of 375 feet and 350 feet.
Pause there, just so that I understand that, please. The umbilical is literally a tube with a mouthpiece at the end of it, is it, or connects to?
The umbilical is the hose with the communication and lighting cables run onto it. That is attached to the helmet or the band mask.
So that somebody can dive without the need for a tank to be attached to them.
It still have a tank on your back, but a small tank that is for your third supply air. You're diving off low pressure air, and then it have a switch on the panel. In case your low pressure run low, you could go to high pressure just by switch.
Right.
And then the one on your back is the third source of air.
Right. So that I'm clear. A diver now about to go into the pipe, for example, got a helmet on. He's got this umbilical cord, yes, which allows him to breathe air from the surface rather than having anything. And that is both high and low pressure, which he can adjust depending on what he needs.
On the panel, on the dive station.
The
diver don't have to do anything.
The diver doesn't have to do anything, right. So it's done by somebody who's manning that, one of your team, presumably, right? So that allows him to go into the tube with that. But he has a backup, which is a smaller tank on his back, so that if anything went wrong, he could discard this and put it...
just turn a valve.
Just turn a valve?
Yeah.
That's all he'd have to do?
Yeah.
Right. What happens if he lost the umbilical for any reason? If that got severed or...
It's not so easy to sever.
It's not?
No.
So you don't have to worry about that?
No.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry.
Yeah.
And the lengths were...
The longest one is 375 feet.
375 feet, yes.
And we have two at 350 feet.
You had two others at 350 feet?
Yes.
And this allowed you both communications to speak as well as breathe?
Communication, lights. If you want, you could hook up video system on it too.
You could even get
footage.
Okay. And can they be joined together?
It's not so easy to join because the cables you have to solder the cables and connect it. It's not like a snap-on fitting that you could do it.
Right, I appreciate it. Aside from any Heath Robinson exercise of putting tape round it, is there a method by which they could be?
Yeah, there's a method they could connect it.
All right, lovely. Thank you very much.
Much of it. And these equipments, from your knowledge and experience, could be used by divers to dive into a 30-inch diameter pipeline?
Yeah, once they're certified, because our company has strict rules and policies, so our divers was out of dive time due to we was on the rig, so they max out the time. That's why you asked if they have qualified divers to use the equipment, and they had.
Right, so it's not that your divers weren't willing to go, it's because they'd already used up the amount of time that they were allowed to be at certain depths.
Correct.
Because they'd been working that day.
Correct.
And just so that everybody understands that's... something that's quite strictly enforced, isn't it? That the amount of dive time that a person might have.
That's correct.
And that's dependent on the depth that they've been.
Depth and time.
And the amount of time that they've been down there.
Correct.
Right. And they've already been doing that all day, so they were not fit. They would not be permitted on any...
Yes, couple, just probably one or two, but guys who dive early, they had enough surface interval, so they could have probably do a short period of time, but not much.
Right. But it made no sense to use them if you had other divers that could be used.
Exactly.
Right. Thank you very much indeed.
You were contacted by Mr. Ronald Ramuta on behalf of LMCS.
Correct.
And based on what you were told and based on your knowledge, you were aware that Ronald Ramuta had available divers who could have used the equipment.
Correct.
To be able to dive into the pipeline.
Correct.
And you remained there from around 7:15 p.m. on the Friday.
Correct.
And until about 5 a.m. on the Saturday.
Correct.
And during that period of time, you were available to make the equipment available for the divers to use.
Correct.
I have no further questions.
Sorry, before...
I forgot to ask one question. Can I?
Please do.
You said the Coast Guard divers came on board and they inspected the equipment.
Correct.
And were they impressed with the equipment that you had?
Yes, they were, because they're not aware to that type of diving.
All right, okay.
They only know about scuba.
Okay.
The Hatton was something new to them.
Much obliged.
Just a short question, please. Bearing in mind the expertise that you were able to bring to bear, together with the equipment that you had, is there anything more that you could have wanted or desired in order to effect the rescue over and above what you already had?
No.
Thank you very much. Yes. Would anyone else like to ask any questions? Please put your hands up now. No, I see. Yes. Just 1 minute. Anyone else? Of course.
Just one clarification I need, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I think Miss Alfonso, I'm going to let you go last. Miss Alfonso has one matter. Well, she has something to ask. Miss Alfonso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Sitaram.
Morning.
My name is Nairi Alfonso. I represent the interests of the Seaman and Waterfront Trade Union. I just had one or two questions because my learned senior, Mr. Mirage, would have asked a couple of the questions that I wanted to have answers to. With a previous witness, I had asked, aside from a diving helmet, is there something lighter that a diver can use? And you mentioned earlier this morning a band mask. Could you explain what that is, please?
Helmet, which is a super light.
But it's super light.
Yeah, it's a complete helmet that goes over your head with a horseshoe that your head cannot get wet.
Okay.
A band mask is only structured to fit the face with straps, but you still have communication and lights.
Could you give me an estimated weight of the band mask?
Could be over 10 pounds.
Okay, could be over 10 pounds.
Yes.
And what's the weight of a diving helmet?
That's very
Significant.
heavy.
Significant, okay. You have any idea of that significant weight?
Over 20-something, depends, 30
got you.
pounds.
Much heavier.
That's why we've all got big necks.
I know that Mr. Ramuta would have called you, Ronald Ramuta would have called you. Aside from Mr. Ramuta, did you see any other commercial divers that you recognized and that you felt were competent? Well, that you recognized.
Yeah, I think it was Hull Support. They're a good company too.
Okay.
And
any individual divers?
Huh?
Any individual divers?
Where, on the badge?
No, anywhere besides Mr. Ramuta.
No, it had commercial divers on the side there too.
Okay, 'cause I see one of your colleagues, Mr. I hope I'm pronouncing it correct. Is it Julier? Adam? Actually,
yeah.
there are two of them. So Adam.
Yeah.
he referred to some volunteer divers who could use the equipment in his own statement. Do you know who he was referring to?
That will be his family, Conan Bedo, Conrad Bedo, Ronald Ramuta, Corey, all of those are commercial divers.
And in your view, Mr. Sitaram, those were divers who were qualified or had the experience?
Certified. Yeah.
And certified. Good, thank you very much for that. And certified to go down into the pipeline.
Certified commercial, yeah.
Certified commercial divers, and who are capable of utilizing the equipment which you have described to the Commission this morning.
That is correct.
Thank you for that. You mentioned hull support. So when Waterworld arrived at approximately 7:15 p.m. on the Friday, did you see other vessels which are used in diving operation?
They were approaching. We had to get permission to proceed to the site.
Okay.
And direct contact was with crew Ronald Ramuta.
Okay.
And then Paria gave him the instruction for us to come alongside the barge.
Okay. So it was Waterworld what is the name of the vessel that hull support came in, you know?
I'm not sure the name of the vessel.
Okay, but hull support came with another diving vessel.
Yeah, they get the permission after to proceed to the boat.
Okay, so they came after.
We was on the barge, and them was on the boat landing.
And what about OTSL?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure? You didn't see OTSL there? So, as far as you can say, there were two vessels.
I'm not sure if it's OTSL or hull support.
Oh, I see. But there was another dive vessel.
I think it's .com, the boat name or something like that. I'm not sure.
Okay. But I don't know the name of the hull supports vessel, I have to confess. OTSL is Gulfstream Eagle, Gulf Eagle, or something of that nature. You mentioned towards the end of your witness statement that after a certain time, I think it was 3 o'clock, that you asked permission to depart.
Yeah, because we had to reattend the rig job to finish off that day. We didn't have much to do, so at 3 a.m. I went on the barge and I spoke to a lady, I cannot recall her name, and explained and asked permission to depart. She did not give permission to depart. She said, Colin Piper want us to stay still, should in case they want to utilize us. And then coming closer to 5, I went back to her, she made the call, and then Colin said, we can proceed to depart. Permission is granted.
Okay. When you first asked the lady who you can't identify, but a Paria person,
yeah,
at 3 a.m. to depart the scene, did she tell you, as you have in your witness statement, something that they were trying to devise, they want you to stay for a reason?
Should in case they need us.
And what would they need you for?
In case they come up with a plan to
Okay, did they tell you they were trying to come up, did this lady tell you they were trying to come up with a plan?
Not necessarily. She said just in case they want to utilize us.
I just want to draw your attention, Mr. Sitaram, to paragraph 18 of your witness statement, and it will come up it's on page 398. There it is. Is that correct there, Mr.
That's
Mr.
correct.
Sitaram? So they asked you to stand by for an additional 2 hours in the event that a rescue plan...
No, she didn't say 2 hours.
No, but in the end, between 3 and 5.
Yeah.
But you were asked to stand by for additional time. Let me just say additional time.
Yeah.
In the event that you were needed for a rescue plan.
Correct.
Correct. And were either the equipment on Waterworld or divers, the volunteer divers, I'll use the same terminology, were they ever used prior to 5 a.m. in a rescue plan that you're aware of?
Negative.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sitaram.
Yes. Thank you. Turn your microphone up. Only this. Did anyone speak to you about a plan that they might have had to effect a rescue? Anyone at all?
Well, most of my communication was through Ronald Ramuta.
Right.
So he devised it, say what the plan was for Conan to go into the pipe using our equipment.
Right. So he did explain a plan to you,
Yeah.
did he? And you're an experienced diver yourself. How many years?
Diving since I was 18 years old commercially.
Well, that would be helpful if I knew how old you were now.
48.
And reluctant to ask, but how many years does that make?
A lot.
A lot. Yeah, well, you're going to have to help me a bit more than that, I'm afraid.
More than...
You started this, so you're going to have to tell me now.
20-something years.
20-something. 21 or 29?
To be around that.
I detect a certain reluctance, and I'm not going to press you any further, but well over 20 years of diving experience. Is that fair? Correct. Right. And you're a commercial diver?
Correct.
Right. Did you see anything wrong in the plan that was described to you by Mr. Ramatar?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson.
I'll start there. Mr. Sitaram, what were the details of the plan that were described to you?
The detail of the plan was for Conan Barrow to use the equipment, our equipment, to go into the pipe. We have lights, communication, backup air, main air, standby air. And they would have go down to the, well, varies from the badge to the pipe, could have be about 40 feet. So you lose 40 feet from 375 feet down into the pipe. They would have traveled the whole length of the umbilical and reach to that distance.
350, 75, I think you said, or 350?
375.
375 was the longest one you had. But what about the condition inside the pipe and whether the pipe was clear, all of that? You had all those details?
No, they didn't have no details of the condition inside the pipe. Yeah. Besides what Christopher said, and that is it.
Did you discuss a risk assessment as to the dive?
I wouldn't plan the risk assessment. I just the captain of the boat.
No. When you were discussing with Mr. Ramuta, did you all discuss the attendant risk in such a dive into a pipe of 30 inches?
It wouldn't have that discussion with the risk with me, as I said.
Beg your pardon?
It wouldn't have a discussion with me with risk.
Okay.
I'm the captain. I'm not the dive supervisor.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, paragraph 14 of your statement. Could we just look at it? I wasn't too clear what you were referring to there when you said Ronald, Conan, and Adam remained under the sea for an hour and a half. When was that in relation? If you could help
Approximately midnight. That is when Paria devised the plan to put on the spool piece, the flange, to send on the camera. They get the okay to bolt up the flange. Adam Houllier is our diver.
Right.
So he went to assist Ronald and Conan in bolting up the flange by using our light communication so they could see what's going on inside for them guys to work to bolt up the flange.
Oh, so that hour and a half is around midnight?
Yes, around midnight.
Because I couldn't tell from... Right. In answer to the chairman, you were trying to describe that the cords couldn't be snapped together as a hose. How do you join that, and what kind of time frame it takes to join that? If you can help us.
Once you have the fitting on board, it could be 20 minutes.
When you say the fitting, what do you mean? Man?
It's just a fitting to screw up two of them together, and you could join the wires and tape the lights and the communication.
Oh, I thought it was a welded or soldering.
No, nothing welded.
Right. And how...
The end of the hose is screw fittings.
Did you have those fittings on board?
Yeah, we have a lot of fittings on board.
Right. Okay, and it takes about 20 minutes to join them. And you could join them and make it, 600 feet, thereabouts?
Yeah, if you want. Right.
Anything else? Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Or if it joined all three, it would be 1,000 feet. You know, nearly the length of the pipe.
If you wanted to.
Yes. Well, no doubt rescue was foremost in everyone's mind. Thank you. All right, well, I think that's it from you, Mr. Seafan. Thank you very much indeed for coming. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
Next witness, Mr. Chairman. The next witness, Mr. Chairman, is Commander Michael Mirage. And Miss... no, we don't have a... We do not have a... no statement. So we have no summary. So I would have to ask him a few questions.
Will you be asking him why he hasn't provided one? Please do.
Yes, I do.
I,
solemnly swear
Lieutenant Commander Maharaj, solemnly swear
that the evidence
I
shall give
to
the Commission
the Commission
in this case
shall
be the truth,
the
whole truth,
truth,
and nothing but the truth.
truth.
Please take a seat. Now, first of all, it's Lieutenant Commander, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you for coming, Lieutenant Commander Maharaj. I appreciate your making the effort, and I know that you have a medical condition which affects your back. So I want you to feel free, if you need to stand or sit, or both as you give your evidence, whatever makes you feel more comfortable. If you're uncomfortable at any point, you need a break, please just let me know, all right? And we'll take a short break so that you can make yourself comfortable, all right? And I do appreciate your coming, and I understand that you've come a little distance and that it is uncomfortable for you generally travelling, so I appreciate your efforts. But as I say, if there any issue at all, you let us know, all right?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Maharaj there is going to be asking you some questions.
Yes, good morning, Lieutenant Commander Mirage.
Morning, sir.
You were aware that there was this commission of inquiry appointed to inquire into the circumstances in which these 5 divers were trapped in the pipeline and 4 died.
Yes, sir.
And you were aware that there were invitations and public notices for you to provide a statement, a submission.
No, sir.
You were not aware of that?
No, sir.
And you were not requested? No. Is there any reason why you didn't provide a statement to us?
I first became aware when I was contacted with a summons to attend, sir. And once I was contacted, then I contacted the Commission immediately to find out what was the manner and form in which things should proceed. There were several communications made between myself and the Commission, and based on that, I was then given a date, which is today's date, to turn to. I have, however, on my own, placed down my recollection of the events.
Do you have that with you?
Yes, sir, but I was told not to come in here with anything.
All right. But you made your own note of what your recollection of these events were, did you?
Yes, I have it in the holding area.
Right. So at least you've turned your mind to it.
Yes, sir.
Yes. All right. Well, Mr. Maharaj is going to ask you some questions.
Yes.
All right. If you have any difficulty recollecting, or you think you might need a document in order to assist you, you'll let me know. All right.
Yes, sir. I think that might be best.
Right. Well, I think there's a difference between any notes that you might have made of your own, doing your best to recollect events, as opposed to a contemporaneous document that might have existed that might assist you in coming to a conclusion about the facts. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But let's see. In respect of that incident, that accident on the 25th of February this year, you were at Paria on the 25th of February?
No, sir.
When did you get there?
I got there on the 26th, but I was made aware on the 25th.
You were made aware on the 25th?
Yes, sir.
And from the 25th, were you aware of the activities which the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard was involved in respect of that accident?
Not entirely, sir. I'll explain. So I'm an officer in the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force Coast Guard, but since 2018, I am posted at Defence Force headquarters. On that day, the 25th of February 2022, I got a call from Mr. Eric Mackey, who is at the ODPM, sometime after 6:30 in the evening, and he asked me if I could assist him with getting on to the Coast Guard. So I let him know, I'm no longer with the Coast Guard per se. I'm at headquarters, but what was the issue? He mentioned to me that there was an incident at Paria. He wasn't entirely sure what the incident was, but he knew that there were some people missing at sea. And he indicated that he, in turn, was contacted by somebody by the name of Mr. Archibald, who, according to him, was not able to get a response from the Coast Guard. So he asked if he knew anybody who could assist him with that. So Mr. Mackey called me. I told him, I said, look, I'm not stationed there, but I could certainly reach out to find out if there was some sort of response. So I did call the Coast Guard Ops Room, and they did tell me that, yes, they were aware of the incident, and yes, an asset or assets were dispatched and were dealing with the incident.
But you were a senior officer at the time of this incident at the Coast Guard?
No, sir, that's what I'm trying to explain to you.
You were not a senior officer?
No, sir. So the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force comprises 4 formations: the Coast Guard, the Regiment, the Air Guard, and the Reserves. I joined as a member of the Coast Guard, but since 2018, I now am at Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force headquarters.
Okay, but I want to draw your attention to what you mentioned the name of Mr. Archibald.
Yes, sir.
You know Mr. Archibald?
No, sir. I never heard of his name before that.
But you know he was connected to Paria? I
know he was connected to Paria.
Right. I want to read to you what Mr. Archibald said in his statement. And it's volume 4, page 1320 at paragraph 33. One three two zero, volume 4, yeah, 1320. At paragraph 33, and I'm going to read the important part to you. Around 1824 hours, Lieutenant Commander Mirage called me and informed me that the TTCG Interceptor, which was the vessel then engaged in conducting an open water search for the missing divers, must return to Stobers Bay to pick up a TTCG dive crew and equipment to possibly attempt a search and rescue exercise within the pipeline. He asked me to get a message to the TTCG personnel at Pointe-à-Pierre and inform them that he gave that instruction. I then contacted security lead Sheldon Suberu, who advised that the TTCG had left already to go to Servers Bay. Is that an accurate statement?
Not entirely so.
Not entirely. Well, what in it is not accurate?
Right, so as I mentioned, I got the call from Mr. Mackey, who told me that Mr. Archibald, who he knows, was trying to get in touch with somebody from the Coast Guard. He also WhatsApped, he being Mr. Mackey, also WhatsApped me Mr. Archibald's contact number, so I could give the feedback directly to him. I contacted the Coast Guard Operations Room, found out that, contrary to what was being relayed to me, the Coast Guard was aware of the incident, and they did, in fact, deploy an asset to the site. Now, when I relayed that information to Mr. Archibald, he then indicated to me that there was no dive team. So at that point, I was under the impression that there were people in the water who were being looked for. Then he said there was no dive team. So I mentioned to him, I said, well, look, is there any way you can get in touch with the person who is in the interceptor so I could probably understand what is happening? He then indicated to me that the vessel had already left. So what I told him I would do is that I would get back onto the Coast Guard operations and find out what was happening. I did, in fact, contact Coast Guard operations again, and they did tell me that the interceptor was there, was rendering assistance in terms of transporting persons and material to and fro. And they did, in fact, leave to embark a dive team. He told me, well, whoever the operator was at the time told me that the dive team was on the way and should be there in about 50 minutes. I then sent a WhatsApp message to Mr. Archibald on his phone sometime after 7 o'clock, maybe 10 to 8. And I said ETA 50 minutes. And I got a message back from
50 or 15?
50. Then I got back a message from his phone saying thanks.
But you were aware that assistance was being required for diving into the pipeline to rescue the divers?
Not at that time, sir.
Not at that time?
No.
So what Mr. Archibald said here, therefore, is not correct, because according to his statement, he's saying that you gave instructions for the TTCJ to return with a dive crew and equipment to attempt a search and rescue exercise within the pipeline.
That is inaccurate, sir.
Okay. Say that again.
That is not accurate, sir.
That's not accurate. Can I ask you, did you know that a man had by now come out of the pipeline?
I found out that later, sir.
You didn't know that at the time you were speaking to Mr. Archibald?
No, sir. When I got the call, like I said, it was about to find people missing in the water, and apparently there was no Coast Guard response, which is why Mr.
What time are we talking about?
I got the call from Mr. Mackey shortly after 6:30.
After 6:30?
Yes.
So you're speaking to Mr. Mackey at about 6:30 on the Friday afternoon, and you're saying to us that you were not told at that time that a man had been rescued from the pipe?
No. What I was told, Mr. Mackey, is that there is no... What he told me,
yes.
Right? Again, I had no involvement in this operation, right? What he told me was that he got a message from somebody at Paria, and he called the name of Mr. Randy Archibald, who was having difficulty, in his words, getting in touch with the Coast Guard.
You said all that.
Right.
I got that bit. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but I understand that bit. Well, all I'm interested in is this, is that when you were WhatsApping with Archibald and when you were speaking with Mr. Mackey, neither of them informed you that a man had been rescued from the pipe itself?
No, sir.
And both of those conversations were around 6 or so, or later that afternoon, or earlier?
Right. So I got a call from Mr. Mackey at 6:30,
right,
thereabouts. And then subsequent to that, I think I mentioned that I sent a WhatsApp to Mr. Archibald at about 10 to 8.
Got you. So can I take it then that your first involvement, such as it is, was after 6:30?
Yes, sir.
Right. And nobody told you that a man had been rescued from the pipe itself?
Not at the time, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Well, could you help us? When was the first time you got to know that a man was rescued from within the pipe?
Right. So I became aware. I think that would have been sometime much later, because after subsequent to speaking to Mr. Archibald at that time and then sending me that message, I then got in. Well, I can't remember if I was called or I called. I think I was called by somebody called Miss Catherine Balkisoon, who was then informing me that the dive team was in fact on site, and the dive team was in fact assisting, and that there was somebody who came out of the pipeline at that point in time. That would have been sometime after 10 o'clock.
After 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
You said somebody coming out of the pipe at that point in time. Are you suggesting you were being told that they'd only just come out of the pipe?
No.
No, right.
I was told at that point in time.
Yeah, you were told at that point,
yes, sir.
That someone had come out of the pipe earlier on that evening?
Yes, sir.
Right. Did they tell you when?
No. So when I found out that, I asked Ms. Balgisoon if he said anything. And she indicated to me that he didn't, because when she came, he was being medically evacuated or something like that, so she didn't speak to him.
Right. She did not speak to him?
No.
And so she gave you no information about what he may or may not have said when he came out of the pipe?
No, she said she didn't speak to him.
Thank you.
Lieutenant, you have told us you have been in the Coast Guard for a period of time, and you're now in the Defense Force.
Yeah, no, sir. I was always in the Defense Force. It's just that I'm assigned to Defense Force headquarters.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So from your knowledge and what you know of the Coast Guard,
yes, sir,
can divers at the Coast Guard dive into confined spaces?
To the best of my knowledge, they have no confined space training, and to the best of my knowledge, the equipment with which they are outfitted is not of a commercial nature, sir.
And if that is the case, that would be readily known to the Coast Guard from the time the Coast Guard knows that it's a dive for within a pipeline.
Well, I can't say when they found out, if they found out before or after they actually got on site, sir.
Okay. But based on what you have told us, the Coast Guard would not have the expertise to dive within a pipeline in order to rescue anyone.
To the best of my knowledge, sir.
Yeah. And that would be known by senior officers of the Coast Guard.
I'm sure it would be, sir.
I'm sure it would be.
I mean, it's a very specialised business, isn't it? Going into a pipeline or any confined space. And that's not something that the Coast Guard will ordinarily become involved in.
No, sir.
No. My understanding is that you have dive teams available, but they're for really open water searches, or perhaps if a ship has sunk or something like that, they might want to go down and have a look if there's anybody in an air pocket or something. But it's really limited to that, isn't it?
As far as I'm aware, sir.
As one would readily understand with the Coast Guard.
Yes.
This is very specialised and clearly needs expertise beyond that which is normally provided by the Coast Guard.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And would it be correct to say that during that, on the Friday, this would be on the Friday, on the Friday evening, you were kept informed several times by Paria as to the status of what was happening in respect of the possible rescue?
Just twice. I mentioned once when I spoke to Ms. Balkisoon, and then sometime after midnight, I got a call from Mr. Archibald, who indicated to me that the dive team, having come on site, made an assessment and indicated that they would not be able to enter the pipeline.
The Coast Guard? The Coast Guard?
Yes.
Yeah.
But from your knowledge, the Coast Guard had gone there since about between 4 to 5 p.m. that evening.
Well, prior to that call at 18:30, I had no idea of what was happening at all there, sir.
Now, on this Saturday, well, have you had any communication with Mr. Colin Piper?
Yes, sir.
I want to, when did you meet did you meet Mr. Piper?
Yes, sir.
When? That was on the Saturday?
Yes, sir.
Around what time?
Maybe in the afternoon, after lunch.
Were you part of the incident command team?
No, sir.
Did you attend the meetings of the incident command team at Paria?
No, sir.
Did you advise the incident command team at Paria?
No, sir.
Did you have any conversation with members of the incident command team at Paria on the Saturday?
With Mr. Piper, yes, sir.
With Mr. Piper. And so let me read to you what Mr. Piper says about that conversation, and I want you to tell me whether that is correct. At volume 4, page 1373 of the witness bundle, at paragraph 166, 1373, Mr. Chairman. 1373. Paragraph 166. Sometime around midday, Lieutenant Commander Michael Mirage of the TTCG visited the ICP for an update. I updated him as to the current status of the rescue efforts. We then moved to a private area where he advised me that his personnel were not certified to use the dive helmet. He also indicated that it was unlikely that the divers in the pipeline were still alive because it was unlikely that they would have had sufficient air to survive for this long. He also advised that we should consider recovery efforts. Is that an accurate statement?
No, it is not.
Well, let us take it. He said that you visited the ICP, which is the Incident Command Post, for an update. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
But you had instructions to visit the Incident Command Post to get an update?
No, sir. So once I was made aware of it, part of my job in Defense Force Headquarters is to provide situational updates across the Defense Force to Director of Operations and the Chief of Defense Staff. And how that is done is we assimilate information coming from different operations rooms, like the Coast Guard, the Regiment, and so on. And then we provide a brief synopsis on a daily basis to the Chief of Defense Staff. However, if they ask any questions based on that, we should be able to have this contemporaneous information. So while I wasn't involved directly, once I got the call, and having received no further information overnight, because the last information I received, as I said, was from Mr. Archibald, who indicated that the dive team could not have entered. And then based on information I was getting from the OCC at HQ, I understood the dive team to be redeployed for another operation on that Saturday. And there was no further updates. So I went to get an update.
Okay. But did you give advice that your personnel were not certified to use a dive helmet?
No.
No. And did you indicate to him that it was unlikely that the divers in the pipeline were still alive because it is unlikely that they would have had sufficient air to survive for this long?
Absolutely not, sir.
Not.
Pause there, please. I need to make a note. Thank you.
Did you advise him that Paria should consider recovery efforts?
Absolutely not, sir.
Well, you have indicated...
Sorry, Mr. Maharaj, have you finished with that paragraph?
Yes.
Yeah. Can I just ask you said earlier that you attended the ICP, the command post, to update yourself on what was happening. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that you were required to put into writing some sort of appraisal of where update. To whom are you providing that?
Right, so we get operation reports from different operation rooms within the Defense Force. Yeah. That is then sent to the headquarters operations room. That is then synopsized and sent forward to the Director of Operations and the Chief of Defense Staff.
Director of Operations?
Yeah.
In the Defense Force?
Yes, sir.
Right. So, and did you do that?
Yes, sir.
So is there a document somewhere which sets out what you were telling the Director of Operations at that time?
What that document sets out is the...
Well, first of all, is there such a document?
Yes, there are documents for the reports that we send forward on a daily basis. Those reports are collated from the operations feeds that we get. So, yes, there are documents that...
Which you were the author of?
I collated the documents, yes, sir.
Well, collating is putting together. I'm collating documents, but I'm not the author of them, right?
Right.
As I understood it, you were updating yourself as you regarded it as your responsibility to do so, in the absence of having any other information. So you attended the command post. You thereby updated yourself on what you thought important. You reduced that to writing so that you could send it to the Director of Operations. Have I got that right?
So...
Have I got it wrong? Just tell me, one way or the other, then you can explain.
You've got it partially right, sir.
Partially right. So tell me the bits that I've got wrong.
Right. So the information that I get from the different operation rooms in detail, it's a very brief synopsis that we send forward to Director of Operations and the Chief of Defense Staff. I went to get an update because sometimes based on the brevity of the information that we send forward, questions are asked by either Chief of Defense Staff to Director of Operations to myself or from Director of Operations to myself. Yeah. So that information that I got, having visited the ICP, was in case I am asked to elaborate on any information that I sent forward. Yes, sir. So
there is a document that you were the author of?
There is a document that I signed and sent forward.
Right. Signed by you?
Yes, sir.
And sent to your Director of Operations?
Yes, sir.
Do you have that document?
I think so. I'll have to check.
Did you bring it with you, for example?
Yes, I believe so.
Is there any reason why you can't get it?
Well, I was totally all the documents outside.
No, I understand that, but I mean, it's here, is it, in the building?
Yes, sir.
Well, I think we'll take a short break while you get it and provide it to council, please.
Okay.
All right, would you do that? We'll take 5 minutes. 10 minutes, please. Thank you, Lieutenant Commander. I appreciate it. What we've done is we've both had a look at it. It doesn't seem to add, to my mind, anything. I don't think Mr. Maharaj thinks it does either. So what we're going to do in the interests of fairness to everyone, the relevant passage, which is just the small part, is going to be copied. The remainder, as far as I can see, is irrelevant to any of the matters here, and is obviously matters which may be regarded as sensitive, so they are redacted, and I'll show it to you before we circulate it, all right? Does that meet with your approval? Are you content with that? Please sit down. Unless you want to stand, you may prefer standing.
That's a document addressed to Director of Operations and onward transmission to the Chief of Defence Staff. So it's not within my remit to say if it should be.
No, I follow that, but it is in mine. So I shall redact everything that is irrelevant. The only part that seems to me to have even some modicum of relevance is the short passage that you told us you wrote, which is directly to do with this matter. All right, so that small part will be made available to everybody, but I don't think it's going to compromise security in this country. All right, very well.
Much obliged. So I want to question you a bit on the updates that you were getting. So you got updates during the Saturday from the IMT?
No, sir.
Oh, no. So how many updates you got on the Saturday?
Just when I went there? You mean to Paria, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so just when I went there, like I said, I was introduced to Mr. Piper, who I was told was the person in charge. I asked him for an update. He indicated to me that based on the information that was received from the Coast Guard dive team, and the fact that they can't or were not equipped to conduct the rescue operation, he was getting advice from commercial divers. And what they were saying is that they were formulating some plans to try to rescue the divers. In fact, he drew a diagram which resembled two right angles facing each other, like a kind of U. And he indicated to me at that point,
behind you?
Yes, like directly behind me. Right, so he drew that diagram, one similar to it, indicating that what was happening. They were doing some maintenance works, and at that point he also mentioned to me that there were divers still in the pipeline, and he was consulting with commercial experts to try to rescue them. Yeah, so that was the update I received. He mentioned there was an option that was being explored for trying to cut the line and get them out, but he said that was not feasible because based on the information he received, the line was, they were not sure where exactly divers were positioned. He also mentioned that the line was concrete coated and that the possibility of cutting the line could in fact cause it to be flooded. So, and then it will take a long time. So that option was not deemed to be viable. He also mentioned that...
Just pause for a moment, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
He also mentioned, you say?
Yes, he also mentioned that there were bits of information he was getting from commercial dive experts who indicated to him that based on their, I suppose, knowledge, it may be unlikely that the divers would have survived. He asked me what I thought. I told him I was here just to get information. I am not directly prosecuting the rescue operation because I am not part of the chain of command for the Coast Guard and the Coast Guard rescue efforts. My job, as I indicated before, is to get information to pass on. He then said that there was also an option being explored if in fact they were deceased to use a mechanism to flush to flush the line so that a plug of some sort that Paria believed to be in the pipeline would then assist in getting the divers and tools out to the other end. At that point, he asked me if I was okay. And I said, yes, but if you consider what you just told me, that would basically extinguish any hope of anybody inside here. He said that this was just an option being considered, like all the options, like the cutting of the line option, and nothing was, decided firmly yet in stone. I reiterated to him that this is something that, nobody knows for sure what is the status of the people in the pipeline. They didn't even know, but something like this could guarantee their status.
Okay, so he was giving you...
Sorry. Mr. Marshall. What sort of time are we talking about when this is taking place, when he's explaining these different options to you?
Yeah, so this is, I visited the ICP at shortly after midday.
Shortly after midday?
Yeah, on Saturday.
I thought you said after lunch.
Well, after lunch, yeah. Well,
just so that I have a clearer picture, please.
Yeah.
I have lunch normally between 1 and 2.
Right, so between 12 and 2 then.
Between 12 and 2, so yeah. That's the time you attended the post, yes?
That's the time I was speaking to Mr.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And after that, you left?
Yes, sir.
And did you go back on the Sunday?
No, sir.
No. Well, you told us he was giving you all the options that he was contemplating and he was taking in order to effect a rescue.
Yes, sir.
Did he tell you about the option that the LMCS divers had rescue plans and they are prepared to go into the pipeline?
No, sir.
No. Did he tell you that Christopher Budram had come out of the pipeline and said that one of the men was just behind him and the other men were alive in the pipeline?
No, he didn't mention any names. He just indicated that the diver came out of the pipeline alive, and that at that time, he being the diver, said to him, to Mr. Piper, that he was speaking to other divers, or he spoke to other divers.
So in your updates, you did not get any information from Mr. Piper or Mr. Anyone apart from Mr. Piper. You didn't get any information from either Mr. Piper or Ms. Balkison or anyone at Paria that LMCS had divers prepared, commercial divers prepared to go into the pipeline.
No, sir.
Rescue. Did you get any information from him that Paria was taking steps through the Coast Guard to prevent LMCS divers from diving into the pipeline?
No, sir.
No. So all the instructions you got from Paria as to the options that Paria was considering to exercise or was exercising were options that Paria said that they were going to exercise.
Based on their advice in consultation with the commercial dive experts they were speaking to, sir.
I have no further questions.
Did you ever speak to anybody in the Coast Guard who were at the scene?
I think when I spoke to Ms. Balkison, I think she handed the phone to Lieutenant Hargraves. And he indicated to me exactly what was then told to me again later by Mr. Archibald, that based on their assessment, they would not be able to enter.
They would not be able to
enter the pipeline.
Right. So, did you understand that there was the possibility of entering the pipeline to effect a rescue, but that you, the Coast Guard, didn't have the necessary personnel to carry that task out?
I understood that.
Have I got that right?
Yes, I understood that the Coast Guard could not have attempted based on their equipment and training.
No, I followed that.
Yeah.
That part of it. It's the bit before that, really. Did you understand that there was at least the potential for a plan to effect a rescue from within the pipeline? That is to say, people actually diving into the pipeline, but that you, the Coast Guard, didn't have that facility?
No, I wasn't aware of any other plan.
You were not aware of any other plan to dive into the pipe?
No, not outside of the Coast Guard, no.
Right, okay, thank you. Yes. First of all, Mr. Rabatar, anyone else? Right, well, there's a range of people who put their hands up. So I'll ask Miss Alfonso, please. You can go first, and then I'll come to Mr. Rabatar, and then up the front row. Ramadar. Did I say Ramadar? Ramadar, forgive me, yes. Miss Alfonso.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Lieutenant Commander Maharaj, sorry.
Morning, ma'am.
My name is Enquiry Alfonso. I represent the interests of the SWWTU, and I just have one question for you, really. The others have been taken care of prior to my putting up my hand. I see some interaction between an interceptor having been sent to Paria's location and that interceptor being asked to come back for the dive team. Did you mention that or earlier?
Yeah, so what I mentioned was that the initial call, again, it seemed to be a bit confused. The initial call indicated to me that there were no responding Coast Guard assets,
okay,
which I then clarified by calling the operations room. And they said, yes, they were aware of the incident, and yes, in fact, they did deploy an asset.
Okay.
I understood then, subsequent to that the interceptor was engaged in searches for personnel, because I guess the same information that I had, which they probably had, I can't be sure, that there was an incident involving people missing in the water. And then, as the time went on, I then, in communication with Mr. Archibald, he then indicated to me that, there's an interceptor, yes, but there's no dive team.
Okay.
So, right? And then,
sorry.
Right. So, and then I asked him, I said, well, okay, if you're in contact with the interceptor, could I then speak to somebody from the interceptor? He got back onto me and said, well, the interceptor's already left. So I then contacted the operations room and found out that the interceptor did in fact leave after having done what I said it did, trying to assist in different ways to get a dive team to return.
Okay, so for my clarification, there would have been another team of TTCG officers on site at Paria's facilities prior to the dive team attending.
Well, as far as I'm aware, ma'am.
Okay, so would you have, in any of your briefings, would you have come across a time at all when, let's call it the first contingent of Coast Guard officers arrived on the scene? Would you have an idea of the time?
Yes, I think that is in a document that I supplied. I can't remember the time, but I could look at the documents and get the time when that was the one dated on the 26th. It says a time.
Okay.
It's being copied. You'll have it in due course, Ms.
Okay.
Alfonso.
You could give. You don't remember 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, any of those times?
No, ma'am. It's in the document.
Okay. So but certainly there was one contingent there before the interceptor left to collect the dive team.
I don't understand the question.
Okay. So one asset, you said one asset, which is an interceptor, would have left Stables, one presume, or left from somewhere, and come on Paria's facilities, that interceptor returned later in the day when you got involved with Mr. Mackey and so on, returned to collect the dive team. Yes? So the two contingents from the Coast Guard would have been on scene, one at an earlier time, and I believe from my reading, maybe around 8:40, 8:43, I think is the time, the dive team arrived on the scene. So was there another, to your knowledge, was there another contingent of Coast Guard officers which arrived prior to the dive team, which did not come till 8:43, as I see from one witness statement?
I'm not sure, ma'am.
Okay, so you don't know if there were any Coast Guard officers there before the dive team came then?
Well, I said there was.
Yes,
there was.
okay. So, and the only thing is you don't know what time those officers arrived?
It's in the document, ma'am. I can't.
Okay, so we'll wait for the document. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Commander Maharaj.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, sir. My name is Prakash Ramada. I represent the interests of the Kurban family and Yusuf Henry's child.
Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you for your involvement and your efforts to assist on that day. Now, you've heard and was shown a statement from Mr. Piper in which certain things were said, apportioned to what you would have told him that were inaccurate at best. Is that accurate? Is that true?
Yes, sir. Just the part that I saw.
Remind us which part that was.
I think it's on page 1373.
Yes.
Paragraph 166.
And the relevant part?
The part that I agree with is that it was sometime around midday. I attended the ICP. I also agree that we moved to a private area. And then he updated me, as I indicated, about different options that they were considering. I disagree fundamentally with what he said about me advising him about a helmet, and furthermore about shifting the efforts to recovery and not rescue.
Explain that for us. What did you actually tell him? And what is he saying that you told him?
Well, that's what he said in his statement here.
Yes.
All right. What I told him, well, I came for an update.
Yes.
All right. And he mentioned to me what the update was. He drew a diagram like this, yes, indicated where they were working, what happened, or what they think happened, which was somehow, he wasn't sure how the divers became trapped.
Yeah, forgive me, we heard that. The question I have asked you is this. What in your mind was the most important difference between what you actually said and what he said you told him?
The most important difference is that what he said is that I made a comment about their ability to survive. Yes. And I also made a comment about the fact that they should turn the operation from rescue to recovery. I fundamentally disagree with that because I'm in the business of saving lives. I was a ship captain prior to my taking up my present position. Yes. And apart from that, as I indicated to him and to everyone here, I was made to be involved through a call which required assistance. I was not part of the effort that was actually prosecuting the rescue. So how that operates is that the Coast Guard, we're speaking about the Coast Guard has, of course, somebody in charge, the commanding officer. He has different departments, one of which is operations. And the operations department has assets and personnel to deploy to effect rescue. So I explained, that I was not part of that. I'm here to get an update, yes, to provide to my superiors.
Thank you very much.
So I say all that to say, yes, there would have been it would not have been my place to comment on anything mentioned here, yes, with respect to survivability and things like that.
Right.
And
so let me get this clear. You are saying effectively that you, as a representative at that time, in the wider sense, of the Defense Forces, did not indicate that it should convert itself, that is, any effort from rescue to recovery?
Absolutely not.
Of course. Because as you just told us, and help us if you could, what is the highest priority in an accident in terms of your training as in the Coast Guard and in the Defense Force?
To save lives.
Save lives. And you appreciate that you're a military man, and of course there are risks in all sorts of endeavors, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in particularly in the water, yes?
Yes, sir.
But you have to overcome the fear of the risk sometimes to save a life. Is that accurate? Once there is, what shall I say, a viable opportunity to save the life, you balance that with some risk, and if there is, no certainty that you're going to fail, you go ahead and you do it, isn't it?
I would agree theoretically. From my own point of view, with respect to this operation, I'll have to respect the determination made by the dive team that was on site.
Thank you very much. Now, you are still a member of the Defense Force.
Yes, sir.
Right. And it was very troubling, to me at least, to have heard that no one from either the Defense Force or the Coast Guard made any effort to coordinate a statement from you for the benefit of the chairman, the commission, and of course, all of us.
As am I, sir.
As you are. And it is by summons then you became aware of the need for you to assist.
Yes, sir.
And we must thank the legal team and the commission for that, correct? You got it from whom, the summons?
Well, I was called by the welfare officer in the Coast Guard,
yes,
who told me that WPC from the Carnage Police Station
yes,
wanted to get in touch with me,
yeah,
because she had a summons for me. So obviously I was asking, well, what was this summons about?
Thank you very much. That was the first time you realized there was an effort to communicate with you to get important information.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Now, many of us may know and some may not. You referenced Mr. Mackey from the ODPM. What does ODPM stand for?
The Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management, sir.
The Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management.
Yeah.
Was there any level or an institution that you were aware of, whether in the past or at present, to coordinate issues of disasters, preparedness, and management outside of the ODPM?
Well,
I'll help you.
A former incarnation was NEMA.
Right. And have you ever heard of the NOC?
I'm sorry, sir?
The NOC, National Operations Center.
I have heard of it, sir.
Yes. Are you aware that it was to coordinate all the arms of the state so that we could have a coordinated effort, and instead of Mr. Mackey seeking you out, you could have that coordinated effort between the different arms to assist?
Well, it's my understanding that Mr. Mackey reached out to me because we worked together in the past.
Yes.
And when they asked for, when he was asked if he could find somebody who he could get a response from the Coast Guard, I guess he called me. As to what the NOC does and how they function, it's never part of the NOC, sir.
You were never part of the NOC?
No, sir.
So as you are aware, at this point in time, that you would not have been involved in this unless Mr. Mackey, thanks for his assistance from the ODPM, making contact with you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Now, the Coast Guard, you were a member of the Coast Guard for how many years?
I still am it's going on 21 years and 3 months now.
Wow. And that the Coast Guard is part of our military asset?
Yes, sir, one of the 4 formations that comprises the Defense Force.
Thank you. And in terms of the use of force, you have authority to use force to carry out instructions. Isn't that accurate?
In certain circumstances,
yes, of course.
Sir.
Yeah, in fact, the Coast Guard is armed with machine guns and other artillery and so. Is that accurate?
Not artillery, sir.
Well, let me put it. With firearms.
Yes, sir.
Artillery.
There's a big difference between firearms and artillery.
I brought it back down, but I do know that the Coast Guard does have those high-level bores, and anyhow, I shan't go into that at this point in time. So the Coast Guard members are armed with firearms. Is that accurate?
When carrying out their duty,
Yes. Yeah,
according to what that duty is, yes, sir.
Yeah. And some of the guns have large guns. I mean, some of the boats have large guns on them.
Some of the vessels, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, you're aware, in the month of February, there was an awful scandal through the country where a baby was shot and killed by members of the Coast Guard on the open waters.
Yes. Don't answer that. Move on.
Yeah. You're aware that the Coast Guard have the authority to use deadly force in certain circumstances?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And part of that endeavor, or part of the duty, is protecting national assets.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And they receive instructions from whom?
To do what, sir?
To do their duty. Who does the Coast Guard get its authority from?
Who the Coast Guard gets authority from?
Yes.
Well, the Commander-in-Chief of the military is the President, and she divests that operational control of the force to the Chief of Defense Staff, who in turn devolves the management of the different formations to the commanding officers of each formation.
You've been extremely helpful. Now tell us, who gave the Coast Guard authority to go onto Paria's property on that day?
I can't say so.
No. But you appreciate the Coast Guard doesn't act on its own. It has to get instructions. Yes?
Is that right? Is that right? The Coast Guard can't act on its own. It needs permission to enter somebody else's land?
My Lord, let me finish that question. I appreciate,
right.
Yes.
Then...
Yes. The Coast Guard has its normal duties. You appreciate that. But all the Coast Guard members know, and as a matter of course, coastal patrol and so. Yeah? Do you know who instructed the Coast Guard to go on site at Paria that day?
I can't say so.
No.
Well, that rather presupposes that there was such an instruction. Now, you need to break that down a little bit.
Sure.
Are you aware of whether there was any instruction at all to attend Paria's site of the Coast Guard? Were they instructed at any point, as far as you're aware, to come onto Paria's waters?
On the 25th?
Yes.
Yes.
I am not aware.
You're not aware.
But I presume there
don't
has
presume,
to be.
Don't presume, it's fine.
Yeah.
You're not aware of any instruction to do so?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Commander, were you aware in the afternoon and into the evening of the 25th of February 2022 who members of the Coast Guard were taking instructions from at Paria's installations?
No, sir.
Of course not. Did you make any inquiry of
No,
such?
sir.
No. Now, as you have told the chairman, that the highest priority is to save life. Now, as an experienced Coast Guardsman, where persons may have succumbed, or become victim of an accident within a water environment, and that there being no sight of persons above the sea's surface, would you consider a rescue effort to be one where time is of the ultimate essence?
To understand, you're asking if there are people at sea
Yes.
below the surface,
Yes.
and we know that they're below the surface,
Yes.
if time would be of the essence?
Of not just the highest level of essence, time.
Yes, sir, according to the circumstances, yeah.
And you would appreciate then that whatever need be done in terms of risk assessment and plans and so should be accelerated, and one does not then have the luxury of reflective thought on all the possibilities that can go wrong. Do you agree with that?
It would depend on the situation, sir.
Yes, and in the situation where persons, there was certainty of proof of life. In other words, one of the divers had come out and say others were alive within the pipe. The proof of life. Would that not create a higher level of urgency in executing a plan?
It would, sir.
Sorry?
Sir, I suppose it would, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Remeter. Yes.
I beg your
Good morning, Lieutenant, Commander. I'd like to take you back to Kamini Prasad.
Can you
Maraj.
introduce? Yeah, I was going to say introduce yourself first, please.
Kamini Prasad Maraj, and I act on behalf of LMCS Limited. I'd like to take you back to the meeting on Saturday after lunch, or after 12, between 12 and 2, that you had with Mr. Piper. Can you say exactly which room you were taken to when you would have met Mr. Piper?
That was in a building close to the terminal area. The room was, it was like a long file room, 2 desks in it. I'm not sure there was a sign on the door. It's a kind of long room, but overlooking the terminal area.
Ground floor or first floor?
First floor.
And when you entered that room with Mr. Piper, was there any other person present?
Not that I could recall.
Was there any recording of the meeting between you and Mr. Piper? To the best of your...
Not to the best of my knowledge. Recollection.
All right. You were taking notes from that conversation and discussion with Mr. Piper?
Well, it was a discussion like we're having now. And I took note of the time. I took note of what he said, certainly.
You said that you would have moved to a different location, a more private area.
No, that was the area.
That was the area.
Yeah,
so it's just one area that you would have met him.
Yeah, so when I came up, I was introduced to him as the person who was in charge.
Right.
I can't remember whom by. And then I went, he pointed me in the direction of this room. And he went there and he gave me the update. And
right. You've been helpful. That is all that I have, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning, Commander. I'm Gilbert Peterson for Paria and Heritage.
Yes, sir.
That Saturday, when you arrived at Paria's compound, the building you said you went to the ICP, and that.
Well, I presume it was the ICP because that's why.
Right.
Because that's
It's near the overlooking the harbour, I think you said, or the berth.
Yes, sir, the terminal area.
And you had a conversation with Mr. Piper.
Yes, sir.
I couldn't help but notice the detail of that conversation without notes. Did you take notes?
Yes, I did, sir.
Right. Of the conversation with him?
Yes, sir.
Right. As a Coast Guardsman, a commanding officer, you arrived there almost a day after the initial incident. Were you aware of that?
Yes, I was aware of the incident from the time I was called. And
right. So it was almost about 20 hours thereafter that you were arriving at Paria. Isn't that so? Give or take?
Maybe.
Yeah. You had no view as to the likelihood of the survival of these men as a trained Coast Guard commander?
Well, I was told by Mr. Piper that there were, in fact, people who survived, at least when he mentioned to me, as I said earlier on today, right, that he said that one person came out, he didn't give me a name, and that person spoke to other people who were in there.
Yeah, no, I'm speaking about the Saturday now.
Well, that's what you told me on the Saturday.
Yeah, I know. When you're at the Saturday, being aware that these men went missing in the afternoon of the Friday, you did not have a view as to the likely survival of these men as a trained Coast Guard commander?
Are you asking my view now, sir, or if I had a view then?
No, then. Did you not try to muster a view at that point in time?
I was given certain information.
Yeah, I know that. But you, haven't been given this information.
The information so the information I got on the day before, as I mentioned, initially spoke to an incident at sea with people missing. Right. Later I became aware that people were in some sort of pipeline for some works being done. Right. I was told later in the evening that, by Ms. Balgison, I think it was, that somebody was taken out of the pipeline.
We got all of that. I don't know if I'm losing you. We got all of that. You visited Paria around midday, just after lunch, I think you said, on the Saturday.
Yes, sir.
At that stage, knowing all that you know up to that point, you did not consider a view as to whether those men would have survived, having been missing for about 20 hours now? You did not think about that?
Yes, sir.
Having thought of that, what did you do with that thought when you were talking to Mr. Piper?
Well, as I mentioned, when Mr. Piper was exploring the different options, he was exploring options for rescue, one of which I mentioned in terms of was cutting the pipe. Which
that's not my question. We got all of that already.
Well, I'm answering the question, sir. So, did I form an opinion as to it? The opinion I had up to that point when you mentioned that was that there was the possibility. So I would not consider, I have no ability to pronounce people alive or dead.
We know that. Neither do I. But I am asking you as a trained commander, if you had a view as to the likelihood of the survival of those men having been missing in a watery situation for about 20 hours. If you had that view, you told me yes.
Yes.
And I asked you what you did having formed a view. What you did with that view. You kept it to yourself or you told Mr. Piper?
Well, I came there for feedback, so I was getting a feedback from Mr. Piper.
We know you were doing that, dealing with the view you formed. What you did with it?
Well, when he told me about the option of getting the water to push the people out, then I expressed to him my view. And the view was, what I expressed to him was that should this option be considered, you are basically extinguishing any and all hope of survivability. And as far as I was concerned, there is no reason to say people are surviving or not, especially when he told me that somebody who we got out of the pipe spoke to other people.
Commander, we got that. That view that you formed, you put it into your reports to your Chief of Operations and Chief of Defense Staff?
No, sir.
So you kept that view to yourself?
I'm not sure what you're asking, sir.
The view that you told me you formed about the likelihood of the men's survival, you told me you formed that view. Huh? What you did with it? You didn't tell it to Mr. Piper. I'm just asking you if you communicated it to your Chief of Defense Staff or your Chief of Operations.
I just indicated that I said something to Mr. Piper about that view.
You told Mr. Piper if he was going to flush and all of that, he's going to extinguish. The view that you formed, did you tell it to your Chief of Defense Staff or your Chief of Operations?
Sir, I'm not sure if you understand what I've been trying to explain.
No, all I ask you, the view...
The answer to that question is no.
Right, okay. So it's not in the document that we expect to see shortly?
No.
Right. You see, we are instructed, and Mr. Piper said that he had that conversation with you as you were referred to in paragraph 66. You are the one who spoke about recovery. And you deny that, right? Let's get it on the record. You deny that you had that conversation.
I said that before, and I'm saying it again.
Did you not also have a conversation at a family meeting session at another location at Paria?
With who, sir?
The club, the staff club office. Did you go there? Staff club building.
Yes, sir.
Right. When you spoke to Mr. Mustaq Mohammed?
I was introduced to him.
I didn't ask you if you were introduced to him. Did you speak with him?
No, sir, after being introduced.
Because I am instructed that you said to him that he should have mentioned recovery to the families.
That is inaccurate, sir.
Weren't the families there at that meeting that you attended later in the afternoon on the Saturday?
I think there was a meeting with the family, sir.
You think you were there? Weren't you?
There was a meeting with the families, yes, sir.
Did Mr. Mustaq speak at that meeting?
I spoke to him after that meeting.
Did Mr. Mustaq Mohammed speak at that meeting?
I don't know, sir.
I mean, you don't know.
I can't recall.
Commander, you must do better than that. You recall a very detailed conversation with Mr. Piper. You cannot remember. All right, let's back up. How you came to go to the club staff club house?
I was told we have a military person on the on the petroleum compound that are assisting with security of different things. And I was told by a member of that military contingent that the minister was about to come on the compound.
Mm-hmm.
And that he was coming to a meeting.
Yes.
So then I said, well, where is this meeting?
Yes.
They indicated it was a staff club.
Right.
I asked them what security arrangements they had in place. They said that he was coming with his detail, and the elements of the defense force that were already on the compound would also be there.
Who you had this conversation with?
One of the members of the support team.
You can't recall who it is? By name. Can you?
I can't recall at this time.
Right. So you went across to the clubhouse, the staff club?
Only to ensure that the minister's arrival was safe.
Well, the minister moves heavy, so he doesn't need your, well, that's a side. He moves heavy, so he doesn't need your intervention. But you went to the clubhouse. When you got there, what happened?
When I got there, I saw that the minister arrived, and there was a meeting that took place inside.
He arrived before you, or you arrived before him?
I arrived before him.
Right. And at what stage were you introduced to Mr. Mustaq Mohammed?
When the minister left.
Right. And that's after Mr. Mustaq Mohammed spoke. That is a yes?
That was a question, sir?
Yes. That was after Mr. Mohammed spoke.
That was after the meeting. I'm not sure if he spoke at the meeting.
But you were present throughout the meeting?
I wasn't present throughout the meeting.
But you say you got there before the minister?
I got there before the minister.
And you were there up to when the minister left?
I was not in the room where the meeting was.
Where were you?
There's a anteroom just outside.
Mr. Commander, let me give you an opportunity. We have a photo of the minister speaking and you stand up behind him.
Yes, I was there when he was
in the room. So don't tell me you're in any side room.
No, I'm saying that you asked me about Mr. Mustaq. I'm not sure if he spoke at the meeting.
But you said you were introduced him when the meeting finished.
Yes, yes, sir.
Right. And Mr. Mustaq spoke before the minister or after the minister?
I don't know, sir. I was in and out of the room.
What were you doing in and out of the room while the minister speaking?
Well, not only when the minister was speaking, sir.
What were you doing in and out of the room?
I'm not sure I understand the question, sir.
Simple. What were you doing in and out of the room?
Went out the room, checked to see how things were looking outside the room in terms of the security. Came back in periodically.
It's not for me, but it's the chairman. I ain't believe you. Who introduced you to Mr. Mustaq Mohammed?
I think it was Mr. Piper. I can't be sure. I think it was Mr. Piper.
But I am instructed and putting to you that you said to Mr. Mohammed that he ought to have mentioned recovery to the families. You doubting that too?
Yes.
So after they introduced to Mr. Mohammed, you just had no conversation with him, you left?
Did I leave?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
He was introduced to you as whom?
Was the manager or the managing director of Paria.
And after that, that was it. Nice to meet you, Mr. Mohammed. I am Commander Maharaj. And that's it?
But it wasn't a meeting.
You all didn't discuss the event, the men, survival, anything like that?
No, sir.
So it was just a social introduction and that's it?
Yes, sir. I came to get the update from Mr. Piper, which I did.
Right. I'm putting to you that you're not speaking the truth. Accept it or deny it. Because Mr. Piper and Mr. Mustaq Mohammed will be coming to the box. I'm putting to you, you're not speaking the truth.
So I can't tell you or to put.
No, you could tell me it's the truth you're speaking. That's what you could tell me. But
So I am telling the truth. Yeah. I swore to tell the truth.
Now that I put them words in your mouth, you're speaking the truth. That's it. Mr. Chairman, no further questions.
Mr. Maharaj. Okay. Thank you very much for coming. I hope it hasn't been wholly uncomfortable sitting down, but thank you very much for coming.
So,
all right, you may go. Just leave that there. That's fine. Just leave it. Thank you very much. I think someone will give you back your documents if you go out with the clerk. She'll give you the documents that you came with. All right, to make sure you take them with you, and we'll have a copy of just those parts that I said. Thank you very much. Right.
Mr. Chairman, the next witness is Leading Seaman Ledgewood.
Right.
What happened is that we had asked the Chief of Defense Force to provide statements, and they provided one for Mr. Hargreaves. And then we had seen the name of Mr. Ledgewood mentioned in some other statements given by the fire officers, and we summoned him to appear.
Yes, I mean, Mr. Maharaj was saying that he was never asked to provide a statement. Wait there a moment, please, Mr. Ledgewood. Mr. Maharaj was saying he was never asked to provide a statement. As I understand it, the command was asked to get them all to write their statements.
Yes.
That never happened, and that was why we felt it necessary to send a witness summons for them to attend.
Yes.
And they had every opportunity thereafter to provide a witness statement, chose not to. No. Right, thank you very much. So, Mr. Ledgewood, am I pronouncing that correctly? Ledgewood, forgive me, Mr. Ledgewood. If there was a way of getting it wrong, you can be assured that I would have been the one to do so. So forgive me, Mr. Ledgewood.
I,
Andre Ledgewood,
solemnly swear
that
the evidence
I
shall give to the Commission
in
this case
shall be the truth,
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, thank you for coming, Mr. Ledgewood. Mr. Maharaj, who's standing up in front of you at the moment, is going to ask you a number of questions, all right? And then a number of other lawyers who are here may have questions for you as well. All right, we expect to have your evidence dealt with before lunch, all right, so you'll be able to go. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ledgewood, I just want to ask you a few questions to see if you could help us, right?
Okay.
You remember the 25th of February this year?
I remember.
And you, sometime that day, you were at berth 6 of Paria.
Yes.
And what were you doing? Around what time you arrived there?
I would have received a call from, I was on duty that day at Stowell's Bay, Chaguamas.
As part of the Coast Guard?
Yes, as part of the Coast Guard.
Yes.
So I would have received a call to go to render assistance to an incident that took place at the Paria platform. That would have been around 1600 hours. So I left. I got down there probably like around 45 minutes later. The call I got was that divers went under the water and they didn't come back up. So they called Coast Guard to render assistance. So I went down with me and my crew to make an appraisal of the situation and see how best we could assist.
You were the leader in charge of the group?
I was the coxswain on the day. The coxswain is a term used to describe the person who's in charge of the small fast patrol craft. And I was the coxswain that day, and I had a crew under my charge.
Right. Can I just help me to understand how it works? Different Coast Guard work in a different way. So if I want the Coast Guard, what do I do? What do I have to? How do I get the Coast Guard?
You have to call the Coast Guard. You call the operations department, or you call the number that they have for Coast Guard. There's a department that answers the call.
You don't just dial 911.
No, there's a Coast Guard number to call.
Right, so it's not an emergency number like you would for the police.
I think
or
they have
ambulance.
an emergency number, but it's not like 911 or.
It's a different one.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's 800 TTCG.
Say again?
800 TTCG.
TTCG.
Yeah.
What? Match it up with the letters on the phone, right?
Yes.
800 and then TCG.
Or 634 TTCG. Yeah.
Okay. And so I call that number and say, I need the Coast Guard, there's an emergency situation, or whatever it is, yes? And then you respond to that, do you?
Yes.
Somebody tells you?
Yes, I get instructions from the senior officers on the day.
Right.
Relative to the information they would have received, and they would have dispatched to me on what I'm required to do.
And were you at sea already on that day? Or
No, I wasn't. I was on
you were
base.
on shore?
Yes.
Right, so you had to launch the boat and off you go. And how
Yeah.
far away is that? Forgive me for asking these questions. Everybody else here knows all of the answers to that, but I don't. So,
This could be about 30 nautical miles from.
13 nautical miles?
Yeah, from.
Right.
So it's
15 miles to the ordinary man, roughly, a bit less perhaps. That sort of distance, yes?
Yeah.
Right, and then, and how long would it take you to cover that sort of distance?
About 45 to 50 minutes.
50 minutes?
Yeah.
Or to go 15 miles?
On sea, yeah.
All right, okay. All right, so that's the length of time we're talking about, 50 minutes or so, to get from where you were to the Paria.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. Now I understand. Thanks very much.
So around what time you reached there? Around 5?
Around 5, yeah.
5. And who instructed you? You remember who was the superior officer who instructed you to go there?
I can't remember who was the duty operations officer on the day.
Okay.
But
And am I correct in saying that your instructions were included to go to assist in a rescue?
Yes.
And did it tell you from the instructions you got where the persons who had to be rescued were?
The information I got initially was that the persons went under the water and they did not come back up.
Oh, I see. So as far as you were concerned, when you left the Coast Guard facilities,
yes,
you were going to assist in a rescue in open waters?
Yes, that's initially. It's only when I got down there, I realized what it really was.
So when you got down there to Paria, you then found out that it was a rescue from within a pipeline?
Yes.
How many of you were there?
It was me and 5 on the vessel.
So 6 altogether?
Yes.
Right. When you got down there at Paria, did anyone from Paria met you and briefed you?
Yes, I went alongside the platform. There was somebody in charge of the platform that day. I can't remember his name. And I got off and I spoke to him and he told me exactly what was happening, what had happened.
Okay. Did you also, about how many persons from Paria you saw there, if you remember? About?
At that time, it had, on the platform itself, could be about 2 or 3 people I saw. I spoke to one, but about 2 or 3 people I saw at the time.
And did you also observe persons from a firm called LMCS who had divers?
Not initially, but afterwards, yes.
Afterwards. About how many persons from LMCS you saw? Would you remember?
Can't remember.
But the persons from LMCS, were they divers?
Yeah, they were divers. They were divers there.
And were they diving in the water at the time when you went there?
At the time, I think it had someone in the water at the time, yes.
But can you tell us if there were divers from LMCS?
I can't.
You can't say?
I can't say if they were from LMCS.
Did you see any divers? Did you know whether there were divers from Paria?
No, I don't know where the divers were from.
Okay. But so you arrived there at around 5?
Yes.
And how long you stayed there?
I was there for about an hour and a half.
About an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Initially, well, what happened after the hour and a half?
Right. Well, while I was there, I would have called back to base to inform them of what actually happened. So I was there on standby for them to give me back instructions. I believe they were organizing a dive team to come down.
Okay.
So I was there waiting for them to let me know when to come to get them. While I was there, I was trying to render any assistance I could.
But you had a dive team there?
No, I didn't have a dive team.
Oh, you didn't have divers with you?
I had one diver. Yeah.
One diver. And was that a scuba? That diver was scuba or commercial diver?
No, not commercial. He was from Coast Guard. Yeah, it was scuba.
Coast Guard.
Yeah.
So when you got there and you realized that the rescue was for men who were in a pipeline,
yes,
what was your reaction?
Well, my reaction, I was shocked initially, but I couldn't make an assessment of the dive that had to take place or any rescue operation because I don't specify in diving. So the diver I had on board, he made his assessment and he said he's unable to attempt any rescue. And that is when I would have called back to my base for them to be aware of what's happening and for them to make any further recommendations.
But did you communicate what you decided to Paria officials or to LMCS officials?
Yeah, we told the person on the platform at the time.
And you knew that person was from Paria?
Well, he was on the platform. Said he was the supervisor. So
he was the supervisor.
Yeah.
And did you tell the other the other persons who were divers?
No, we didn't communicate with any other divers at the time.
Okay. Whilst you were there, you knew that one of the divers who were in the pipeline he came out, he was rescued.
Yeah, I was there while the one came out, yes.
And what did you see?
When he came out, he was covered in oil.
Mm-hmm.
Could have only seen his eyes when he opened them and his teeth in his mouth. They had someone come to take him to land and they rushed him to hospital.
But from what you observed there and your presence there, when he came out, did you know whether the persons who helped him were LMCS divers?
I can't say. While I was there, I did, however, I was trying to assist, as I said before. So it had times that I would leave the platform and go across the jetty. About 2 or 3 times I did that. Once was to pick up divers from LMCS. Once was to pick up 2 other technicians. And then one diver later on before I left to come back up for the dive team. And I brought them across to the platform for them to do whatever they came to do.
So you took your boat to the jetty?
Yeah.
To collect
one
other
time,
people?
our boat had already left the jetty, but it was a bit slow.
Right.
So my boat being faster, to hasten the process, I went across to the boat, they come over on my boat, and I brought them back across.
Right. So because you had a quicker boat, you picked them up at sea?
Yes, I was trying to help.
Yeah, no, got it.
And how many persons you picked up?
First was 2, I believe. Then again was 2 other persons, and then the last time was 1 person.
And these were divers?
Yes.
And you saw them dive subsequent to that?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. Now, did you know the names of any one of these persons?
Can't remember.
You can't remember. Whilst you were there, did you see anyone dive in the pipeline? And
Yeah, while I was there, I didn't see how they were getting into the pipeline.
Yes.
But while I was there, it had a point where we heard shouting coming from the pipe. And that is when, well, they started to be a little more urgent. And I think that is when someone went into the pipe and eventually they came out with the survivor.
With the survivor?
Yes.
But after that, did you see anyone go back into, do you know whether anyone went back into the pipeline?
I know it always seemed to have a diver in the water at any point in time, it looked like. So I don't know when they would actually go under and try to go into the pipe, I don't know, but it always had divers more or less in the water.
You remember a name called Michael Kurban?
Can't remember, no.
Oh. You can't remember any of the names? Okay. Now, how long you have been in the Coast Guard?
16 years.
16 years. So, would I be correct in saying that the members of the Coast Guard who are divers are not trained to dive in a pipeline?
I cannot confirm that. I don't know the training that divers receive while doing their diving training. I have never done it. I don't specialize as a diver.
Oh,
so
you're
I've
not
never,
oh, sorry.
No,
Okay.
so I've never done the diving course, so I don't know what...
Oh, I see. So what position you occupy in the Coast Guard?
I'm a seaman, so I am, as I said, I'm a coxswain.
So excuse my ignorance. You're a seaman, but not a diver.
Right. So the Coast Guard, there are different
Can you swim?
branches. Huh?
Can you swim?
Yes, I can swim.
I just thought I'd check.
So there are different branches in the Coast Guard. There's seamen, there's technicians, which cover welders, mechanics, electricians. There's writers, who are more clerical. However, the seamen, when you come in as a seaman, is a broad spectrum. So as a seaman, you could do training while in the Coast Guard to specialize in a certain field. So you could do the diving course and you become a diver, work in the diving department. I never did the diving course. I am a medic and a physical training instructor. So I did those two courses while in the Coast Guard, so I specialize in that. Otherwise, I'm a seaman first, so I operate as a coxswain.
Why?
Which is...
That's like a captain, is it?
Of the small boat. I'm in charge of the small fast boat.
Of a small fast boat.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Okay, so whilst you were there, and you had seen the survivor came out of the pipeline, how long after the survivor came out of the pipeline that you remained there?
I can't remember. I can't give a...
But there came a time when you handed over to somebody else.
I didn't hand over down there at the time. Only time I handed over is when I went back up for the dive team and came back down with them. With the dive team, the officer in charge was, well, he was in charge.
Okay, so help us then. So you left the scene at some stage and you went back up to get the dive team?
Yes.
Around what time you left the area?
It had been around 6:30.
6:30. And when you came back with the dive team?
Yes.
And was at that time you had Lieutenant Hargraves?
Yes.
I see. And he was then in charge?
Yes, he was.
Right. When Lieutenant Hargraves came and you brought back, and you came with the dive team,
yeah.
Did you see persons diving in the water?
I believe there was people in the water, yes.
And how long did you remain with Lieutenant Hargraves? Did you remain during the period of time he was there?
Yeah, I was there for the entire time.
Oh, good. And whilst you were there with him, would it be correct to say that divers were trying to go into the pipe, to dive into the pipe, and at first the Coast Guard were allowing them to do it and then they prevented them from doing it?
All right. At no time at all, the Coast Guard prevented anyone from diving.
At no time?
I can't recall that at all.
Could we be clear, please? There's a difference between making an assertion, at no time did they ever prevent anyone, from making an assertion, I don't recall seeing anyone do that. I didn't do that. Well, what is it? Can you say whether or not any member of the Coast Guard did prevent anyone from going in the ocean?
No one from the Coast Guard prevented anyone from diving.
Right, well, you weren't there for the better part of 2 hours, I'm assuming, if you had to go back to the Coast Guard operations, pick up your divers, Mr. Hargreaves, and all the equipment, presumably, and then bring them back again.
Yeah.
He told us the first time that took 50 minutes to make that journey one way.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
So it's not unreasonable to assume you took a couple of hours to do that, is it?
Yes.
Right, there and back. So did you leave the Coast Guard in situ when you left?
No, when I left, I went with everyone who was with me.
There were no Coast Guards there at all for that 2 days?
There was a big vessel down there at the time, but they couldn't, besides that vessel, they could not go into the platform.
They couldn't go into the platform?
No.
What, while you were there?
No.
Or at all?
No, they couldn't go at all. So they were just off providing support.
Why couldn't they go in?
The vessel is too big.
Too big?
Yeah.
Right, I thought this took tankers, but never mind. This Coast Guard boat couldn't come in, correct? This is a different Coast Guard boat to yours altogether.
Yes,
it's a much bigger
vessel. It's a bigger craft.
And different people on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So they were standing offshore.
Yeah, they were standing off.
Well, right. Yeah. I mean, did they drop anchor or what was?
I don't know.
You don't know, all right. I mean, were they static or were they going round and round?
No, they weren't static, so they were moving around.
Moving around.
I don't think they dropped anchor. No.
All right. And so when you left for this period of a couple of hours, you didn't leave any of your people behind?
No, not the people I went with, no.
Right. So for a period of 2 hours, at any rate, as far as you're aware, there were no Coast Guards on the berth at all?
As far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And at no time while you were there as coxswain for your small boat, did you see any of your colleagues or yourself prevent anyone from going in the water?
No time at all, no.
One other matter, please. Were any of you armed?
Yes, the crew is armed.
All the time?
Yes.
Right, so you have sidearms, do you?
Sidearms.
And do you have some sort of automatic weapon?
Yes, a primary and a secondary weapon, yes.
Right. So the primary weapon is
a rifle, yes.
A rifle or an automatic weapon?
Automatic rifle, yeah.
An automatic rifle, short in length?
Not really, yeah. But it's...
Okay. And so that's standard procedure that the Coast Guard carry these two weapons?
Yes.
So you and your colleagues would have been carrying those weapons whilst you were attending upon the scene. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And can I take it that at no time did you feel it necessary to pull one of those weapons out and point them at anyone?
No,
this wasn't that kind of situation, was it?
No.
All right.
It wasn't.
All right. Thank you very much.
So when you were there leading the team, before you went back to get the persons who were the divers, the Coast Guard had weapons?
Yeah, my team had weapons.
Your team had weapons?
Yes.
And when you're on duty, you would be holding the weapons but pointing it down, not so?
No, the weapons would be slinged across the body.
They would sling across the body?
Yes.
Okay. And when you came back with Mr. Hargreaves, about how many members were in the group that came back with you?
I think the dive team was about 10.
About 10?
Yeah.
And did you have any other persons with you or just the dive team?
Yeah, I had 2 other people from my crew. So I left back some who was initially on my crew to make room for the 10 divers.
And so when you came back with the divers, it meant that the divers had weapons with them also?
No, the divers had no weapons.
So when you came back with the divers, they didn't have weapons?
No, they didn't have weapons.
So who had weapons on that occasion?
Just the 2 men on my crew.
And who were there? What about Mr. Hargreaves?
Mr. Hargreaves didn't have a weapon.
He didn't have a weapon.
So just three of you, basically, you and your two.
I didn't have a weapon. Yeah.
You didn't bring one?
No, I didn't.
Is that normal?
Yes. As the coxswain, more than likely, whenever
your hands are full.
Yeah, after drive the boat, either if I'm out there on some suspect vessel, if they open fire on us, I can drive and fire back at them. So
no.
I have to either make evasive maneuvers or some sort of attacking maneuvers.
So it was just the two colleagues of yours
they
that were on the return journey who were armed?
Yeah.
No, I just want to get it clear from you, and I want to give you the opportunity. You are telling us that after you came back, you already told us that before you came back, at no time you saw any of your Coast Guard or you preventing anyone from diving.
No.
When you came back with Mr. Hargreaves,
yes,
and you remained there until you all left around what time?
It was after midnight, definitely.
After midnight?
After one, yeah.
So from the time Mr. Hargreaves came with you until you all left at around midnight, did you see at any time the Coast Guard prevented persons from diving?
No, I never saw that.
Did you hear any instructions given to the divers from anyone in the Coast Guard during that period of time for them not to dive?
No, I never heard that.
Are you sure you're speaking the truth?
I'm telling the truth.
Okay. Did you at any time, whilst you were there the first time or the second time, you got any briefing from a lady called Catherine Balkisoon?
I can't remember. There was only one time I can remember. While I was there the first time, someone on the platform, I can't remember who it was, he was on the phone. And he shouted out to us to ask who's the senior person here at the time.
Get Hargreaves' statement.
And my crew heard him and they identified it was me. And he said someone wants to speak to me on the phone. I took the phone, answered the call. Can't remember who it was, but what they asked of me was to take charge of the rescue operations there. And I indicated to him that I can't do that, as I don't specify in that.
Right, I want that broken down a little, please. So you spoke to somebody. Wasn't Miss Balkisoon?
I
think there was only one lady on that.
It was on the phone. It was over the phone.
Yeah.
It was.
Just a minute. Someone spoke to you while you were on the berth.
Yeah.
To ask you who was in charge.
Yes.
And you told them you were in charge. This is before Mr. Hargreaves arrives or any of the dive team. This is the earlier part, all right? So there's only your boat there. The other one's standing offshore.
Yeah.
All right? And you're asked, and so you told them it was you, did you? Yeah?
I was the on-scene commander at the time, yes.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So you're saying, well, I'm in charge.
Yeah.
Did you speak to someone then on the telephone?
On the phone, yes.
Who did you speak to?
Can't remember who it was. I remember
Does the name Colin Piper ring any bells with you?
I can't remember.
Can't remember. Well, was the person who spoke to you, did they claim to be in charge on shore? Did they say who they were?
I think they were from Paria, yeah.
Right, so somebody from Paria.
I think so.
Who was in authority, whoever it might have been, all right? And they spoke to you and said what?
They asked me to take charge of the rescue operation.
They asked you if you would take charge of the rescue operation.
They asked me to take charge.
And what did you say?
I said I cannot take charge of the rescue operations because...
Right. So they... Just a minute. And you said you cannot?
Yes.
Because?
I'm not a diver. I'm not trained in diving in any capacity.
Because you're not a diver?
Yeah. And
so
I have to take instruction from the Coast Guard.
And so you take your instruction from the Coast Guard?
Yes.
Did that person or any other person ask you to take charge of security?
No.
And in answer to questions from Mr. Maharaj, you made it clear that at no time at all did you ever, or any of your other colleagues, prevent anyone from going in the water.
At no time at all.
Right. And neither were you asked to do so?
No, never.
Did you hear anyone giving instruction that the divers should not go in the water?
I've never heard that. No.
You never heard that?
No.
So at no time when you were there, you didn't hear that coming from anyone not to go in the water?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Maharaj.
So as far as you can tell us, whilst you were there, you did not see anyone from Paria preventing persons from going into the water?
I didn't see, no.
And you, as far as you know, you and your colleagues did not get any instructions from Paria to prevent persons from going into the water?
No.
And you are telling us here today that from the time you came back with the dive team,
yes,
until you left at around what time? Midnight, you said?
It was after midnight. I can't
after
recall
midnight.
the exact
During
time,
those
right?
hours,
yeah,
there were no instructions you heard from anyone to prevent persons from going into the water?
I can't recall that.
I'm sorry?
I can't remember that, no.
You can't remember that. So is it that there may have been instructions given and you heard it, but you cannot remember it?
Me? Can't remember hearing anyone give any instructions like that.
You cannot remember?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes, this is the second time you've done that. There's the qualitative difference between I can't recall or I can't remember from saying it did not happen. Do you follow what I mean? You do follow what I mean, I'm sure.
As far as I know, no, that did not happen.
You cannot now recall anyone saying to anybody else, don't go in the water or whatever it might have been. Right? No such instruction was ever given.
No.
To your recollection or to your memory? Or at all?
To recollection and to memory is not the same?
It is the same thing. Exactly the same thing. I'm just using another word for the same thing.
Okay.
All right? It's either it's that or not at all. Either it did, I can say positively it did not happen, or I can say it did not happen in my presence, or you can say I do not recall that happening.
I do not recall that happening.
Right. Thank you.
Much obliged. No further.
Can I have a show of hands first before I decide which order? Right, thank you very much. Mr. Ramadar first, then, please.
Oh, thank you very much, Chairman. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And first of all, thank you for your service to our country and on that evening, the execution of your duty. Now, my name is Prakash Ramadar. I look after the interests of Yusuf Henry's daughter and Mr. Kurban, who is fortunate. His family, he is now deceased, of course. Now, you appreciate the environment you had gone to. You went with the best of intentions, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. But it was a noisy environment.
Not really, no.
No, well, good. There was a lot of movement to and fro with different persons.
Yes.
You were not focused on what other conversations were taking place. You were focused on what you thought you could possibly do to help. Isn't that accurate?
Yes.
Yes. You had gone there without knowing the full scope of what had happened.
Yes.
And you did the best you could with what you had.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
That included 2 other colleagues with machine guns, if I may call it that.
Yes.
Yes. And sidearms. You, of course, had a sidearm
Yes.
with you.
No, I did not.
Or you didn't have any sidearm at all?
Yeah, I didn't.
And of course, you know, as you told very colorfully, Gilly, excuse, Mr. Peterson. Yeah, yeah. As you told his Lord, the chairman, not at all, thank you. Yeah, that there may be occasions when the Coast Guard will be under basically fire or dealing with high violent potential issues that you need to be able to maneuver, correct? And you're fully aware then of the power to use deadly force in an encounter.
Yes.
And in fact, you are aware of the use of deadly force by the Coast Guard just 2 weeks before.
2 weeks before?
Yes. By shooting of a civilian on the open waters. You know of that? A baby?
Oh, yes, yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Now, you are a Trinidadian and a Tobagonian first before you became a Coast Guardsman.
Yes.
You love this country, correct?
Yes.
And you were appalled that a baby had to die in circumstances as it happened, correct?
Yes.
Now, you know that made major news in the country. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes. So, let's see where we are now. You've come down, you got your call, you arrived at Paria. You knew that the assets there were Paria's. It wasn't open water. Is that correct?
Yes.
You knew Paria would have been, it being the assets of Paria, it would have been under Paria's control, correct?
Yes.
And it is Paria who had sought the assistance of the Coast Guard, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yes, of course. And certainly, as you've told all of us, no Coast Guardsman pointed any gun at anybody, said, get out of the water, nobody to go back in.
No.
Right. Of course. But you appreciate that you didn't hear, as you've told us before, all the conversations between other persons or among other persons.
No, I didn't hear.
No. You cannot tell us also what Paria officials may have told persons who were in the water?
No, I can't.
No. But you were there, notwithstanding making what we consider possibly a reasonable decision. You couldn't help with the dive because you didn't have the equipment.
No, I couldn't.
But you were there,
yes.
Still. And in some form or fashion, in communication with Paria officials. Yes?
Some form of fashion, I guess.
Yes. Now, I'm not trying to trap you, no. I'm sincere when I told you, thank you for what you did, as best as you could. But you understand the chain of command more than anybody else. You're a military man, yes? Huh?
Yeah.
What time did you leave the scene to go retrieve, to help bring back divers? What time did you actually leave?
About 6:30, yeah.
Around 6:30?
Yeah.
By which time you knew that someone had come out of the pipe alive.
Yes.
Yes. As a human being first, your anxiety was to try, okay, if you could get the other guys.
Yes.
Isn't that why you left to go and hasten bringing the other divers?
Well, because I got instructions to do so, yes.
Yes, but you as a person, right, you mashed the gas extra board going to get these guys, right?
Yes.
To come back, yeah. You do not know what happened, as the chairman indicated, during that at least 1 hour before you returned in relation to other Coast Guardsmen from the big boat.
I can't. I was not
No,
there.
of course, that's the point. Right. But that big boat, like, was it an OPV size?
Small, about 50 meters.
150 feet.
50 meters length, yeah.
Right, about 150, 160.
Oh, okay.
That had little dingy, what I call the small boats that we used to put on them so they could come in?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you call them? Or the big boats have smaller ones on them?
Yes, yes.
Service craft, I know.
You can say a dinghy, you can say an interceptor.
An interceptor, fast moving, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. And that is used to bring sailors to and fro from wherever they wish to have gone, correct?
Yes.
So when you left that area, you do not know whom or how many others may have come from that, shall I call it a larger boat? What's the name of that big boat? We have a few.
I can't remember which one it was. It was one of the damn patrol craft.
What's the name, you remember?
I can't remember which one it was.
But that is one of the modern boats, fully equipped as far as you're aware, correct? Huh?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware.
None of those had life-saving lifelines on them, to your knowledge? You know, like airlines and so?
We mean like diving equipment?
But yes.
Yes, they're supposed to be equipped with diving equipment.
There you go. So was an inquiry made, and I'm not blaming you, right? And again, I thank you. Any inquiry made by anyone there as to the capacity and what that boat was furnished with, whether it could have assisted there and then?
I don't know.
No. Mr. Hargraves, what time did he arrive on the scene?
We got back down there, could probably be around 9 p.m.
Around 9. And what time you said you left the scene?
6:30.
And the next time you returned, Mr. Hargraves would have been there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're talking about 2.5 hours in your absence, isn't it?
Could be about, yeah.
Yeah. Do you know the names of the other two of your colleagues who were armed with machine guns and sidearms?
The other two, when I went back down, you mean?
No, when you first went, remember you said you had two guys, two friends,
Yes.
two what do you call them in
That was my crew, the crew.
Your crew. Do you know the names of your crew members who had guns?
Can't remember the names right now, but
That's all right.
I have it on a. Yeah,
Right, it happens. It happens. Do you know whether anybody took a statement from them as to what they did or did not do or said?
I don't know. I don't think so.
There you go. So you can't speak to what they said or did.
I'm speaking for myself.
No, brother, once again, no trick question here.
Okay.
Straight as you get out of it, right? As straight as it is. You cannot say with honesty what they said or did, because you were focused on other things too, isn't it?
I was.
Right.
But they
No.
are under my charge.
Of course.
Right.
Of course. And congratulations. So, Mr. Hargrave returns around 9-ish. Around there, right? That's only 30 minutes. He's what rank?
Lieutenant.
Lieutenant.
Yeah.
He's, I understand, in retirement now?
I've heard so, yes.
Yes. You know how long after this incident he retired?
I don't know, no.
Okay, no problem. So, as you have indicated, as you say, command structure, and so at that point in time, in that area that you had arrived at, Paria was the authority there. It was the assets, yes?
Yeah.
As you have already told us, you do not know what Paria officials would have told other persons.
No.
No. You do know, as you've been telling us, that there were persons in and out of the water while you were there.
Yes.
You personally did not attempt to stop anyone.
No.
No. But did you become aware at any point that diving had come to a screeching halt, efforts to dive?
At a point when they ended for the night, I believe. Yeah.
Who?
I don't know who ended the operation.
No, but when you returned, was there any effort being made to dive when you returned around 9?
Yeah, there were efforts.
Who made efforts to dive?
I don't know who.
Was it
identify
military men?
I know they were making assessments while they were there, but I don't think they attempted to dive now.
There you go. Did you see anybody dive when you returned at 9 o'clock?
Yes, I remember it had two guys in some big suits with some helmets, and they went under the water, but I don't know who they were from, what company they were from, or what.
I see. Well, you do the best you could to help us. Now, when you were on scene, when you had just arrived and until you left, your two armed colleagues were in the same area with Paria personnel. Isn't that accurate?
They were on the boat with me.
Yeah. So they never left the boat?
Yes, that the only time we left the boat is when we came off on the platform and we had just reached.
Let's deal with that.
Speak to the supervisor.
So, I beg your pardon. I didn't mean to interrupt you. So, but they did leave the boat together with you.
Yes.
So a full sum, how many Coast Guards men now on the platform?
There's about 3 of us up there.
3?
Yeah.
And when you were on the platform, there were Paria personnel in and around the area you were at?
Yes.
Yes. Do you also see part of your duty, not just in terms of rescue, but protection and carrying out instructions?
Yes.
Yes. That includes carrying out instructions to protect Paria's property.
No, the Coast Guard is not a private security firm.
I know that. It is not a private security. Okay. Everybody laugh and hear this one now. It is the people of Trinidad and Tobago who pays for it.
Yes.
Correct. Therefore, it not being a private security, Paria's assets fall as a company belonging to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. And you appreciate that part of Coast Guard duty is to protect public property.
Yes.
Yeah. Paria had its own private security. You know that? Do you know that?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Probably.
So as far as you are concerned, you were the only ones who had the wherewithal to protect property on that evening.
I wasn't there to protect property.
You're going well.
I was there to render assistance.
Yes. And what assistance did you render?
I provided transport for the dive team.
Right. And anything amounted to help save the lives of those divers?
When the dive team got there, the senior diver, who was L.T. Hargrave, he would have been in talks with whoever representatives he met there. I had nothing to do with anything they discussed.
No. Once again, brother, I'm not here to blame you, Understand, we congratulate your efforts. Hargrave spoke to representatives of whom? Paria?
I don't know who you're speaking to.
But they were in uniform and so what I mean, the PPEs, the jumpsuits and so, yeah?
There was some, there was others in regular clothing.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you saw a woman there as you told us? You can't remember? You didn't say so, I beg your pardon.
No.
You didn't see a woman there?
There were men and women there, yeah.
How many women you thought you saw there?
I can't remember.
The woman spoke to you at all?
I can't remember that, no.
Did you speak to a woman there?
Can't remember, no.
You can't remember? Well, you are the person coming in, you're the Coast Guard, the cavalry are arriving to save the day. Who did you first think you needed to speak with upon your arrival?
I went to the platform and I spoke to the man who identified himself as the supervisor on the platform.
Supervisor belonging to whom? Private security?
Paria, I believe.
Yes. So, having spoken to the supervisor, at no stage did you get his name?
Yes, we got his name.
What's his name?
I can't remember his name.
You took a note anywhere?
Yes, it's written down.
Where?
On the patrol report.
On the?
A patrol report.
A patrol report. Do you know whether that has been made available to the commissioners and his fantastic legal team?
I do not know.
Do you think that would have been important in terms... Well, let me make it helpful. When was that report done?
The report is done after any run the interceptor mix. So whenever we go out, you come back in, yeah.
It's a log, isn't it?
Yes, it's a log, yes.
And you yourself made that log?
Yes.
When did you make that log? That entry into the log?
When we got back to base.
What time would that have been?
It's on the patrol report.
And who has access to that now?
Coast Guard operations.
Who is head of Coast Guard today?
Who's head of Coast Guard today?
Yeah.
The acting commanding officer is Commander Isaac.
Isaac? And who is the Chief of Defense Staff? All right, don't answer that. I know you ought to. Now, after you made your entry into that log, as you've just hinted to us, the name of the person you spoke with, or the names of persons you spoke with, would be entered there, wouldn't it?
Yes.
And the instructions you may not have received from person on that. Is that accurate?
Yes.
But to be fair to you, that wasn't your highest priority, the log.
The log is written up after they come back in.
Yeah, but that is not your highest priority. As a seaman, as a human being, as a Trinidadian and Tobagonian, were you not very disappointed that no lives were retrieved under the care and control of the Coast Guard.
If I was disappointed, I understood the situation, and it seemed that the Coast Guard couldn't do much to help.
Yeah. And you wanted to do more, isn't it? If you could have saved them, you would have, wouldn't you?
Yes, if I could have, I would have,
Yeah, and you are disappointed as a human being that, with what you had, you couldn't do it, isn't it?
I guess.
No trick question there. But you knew that there were persons who were there willing and able and available to do rescue. Correct?
I did not know that, no.
You did not know that? So did you know that efforts were being made by persons who were going into the water to try to get to rescue persons?
Yes, I saw that, yes.
Yeah. Would it shock you to learn that persons instructed that they should not continue any effort to rescue?
I've been hearing that is what happened.
And you have reason to doubt that?
I don't know.
You don't know exactly the point. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Once again, I'm a little disturbed to find out that there's some log somewhere which might help us all understand what was happening contemporaneously. You're telling me that there is a log available which would have your notes of what happened on the night virtually contemporaneous with the events?
Every time you go to sea, when you get back, you have to do what's called a patrol report.
Well, it doesn't surprise me in the least. What does surprise me is that we've been asking the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard for information about their involvement in this matter, particularly given the nature of some of the allegations being made at this inquiry and before, for material in relation to it. What did we get from the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard? The statement of Lieutenant Eric Hargreaves, who is apparently retired. We've had nothing from them at all. I'm not having a go at you, please understand this. We've had nothing from them at all. We have had to issue summonses for people to attend, you included. Did you get any instruction from Mr. Commander Isaac to provide a statement to this inquiry?
No, I didn't.
When was the first time that you heard that you were supposed to come along and give evidence?
It was about a week before the first day I was supposed to come, which was the 21st of November, about a week before, or actually, so a few days before.
When you received the summons?
Yeah.
Yes. Because of the lack of response from the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard. It's not your fault. All right? It's not your fault. But it is, to say the least, disappointing. I mean, are we serious about trying to find out what happened? All right. Anyone else, please? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Ramadan. Now we have Miss Alfonso, who's going to ask you a few questions on behalf of the union. Can we try and get this done before lunch, please?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's afternoon now. Good afternoon, leading seaman Ledgerwood. Have I pronounced it right?
Yes, you pronounced it
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
Right. Leading seaman, could you tell us what kind of boat that you would have left Staubles with at about, you said 1600 hours, 4 o'clock?
It's a fast patrol boat, so it's more or less a speedboat.
Okay, so like a pirogue or something?
It's about 40 feet in length, so
okay.
Bigger than a pirogue.
Okay, so like a big pirogue, kind of, yes. Right? Okay. And you said you received a call at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Whom did you receive that call from?
From my operations department. Whenever I'm working, they always call me whenever I have to go to sea. That is where I get my instructions from.
Okay. Is there a particular person in the operations department that you received that call from?
On every day, there's a duty operations officer.
On this day? I beg your pardon. My bad.
Yes.
On this day, on the 25th of February?
There would have been a duty operations officer on the day, yes.
Okay. You recall who that person is?
I can't recall who that person is.
Okay. So you received a call from whoever the duty officer was on that day?
Well, not from him directly or her directly, but from the department that calls me to disseminate the information.
Okay, from a person from the operations department?
Yes.
But you can't recall that person?
No.
Rank of that person?
No.
Okay. And did that person who you can't recall give you any instructions?
Yes, the instruction was to go to the Paria area. The instruction was persons went under the water and they didn't come back up. We need to go to render assistance.
Okay, so your instruction was to travel to the site.
Yes.
And to render any assistance that you could.
Yes.
Those were instructions. And you were as a leading seaman, you were the senior rating on the 40-foot, something bigger than a Paria.
Yes.
And you had 5 other persons with you, or 6 other persons?
5.
5 others. So a crew of 6 altogether.
Yes.
So you made your way. You would have told the commissioner down to Paria, and you would have arrived before 5 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay. And when you arrived, did you go on the, I think, crane barge that belongs to LMCS?
On the what?
Crane barge, a barge. Did you see a barge? Did you go on that barge?
Yeah, there was a barge there. No, I didn't go on the barge. I went on the platform.
You went?
There was a platform with a little kind of slip, a jetty. I went alongside there and I went up on the platform and spoke to the supervisor.
Okay. And when you spoke, you said the person who you identify as a supervisor, and I think in response to my friend Mr. Ramadar, you said a Paria supervisor.
I believe it was, yeah.
Okay. Was that berth noisy at all?
I can't remember it being that noisy, you know.
Okay. Wasn't a compressor or anything running, or people moving around?
At times there was something running.
There was something running?
Yeah.
Okay, so it might have been a little bit noisy.
Yeah, could have been.
So you have 5 other officers with you, leading seamen.
Yeah.
What would those officers have been doing? They were with you at all times?
Yes, they were with me.
So everywhere you went, they went?
Yes. I didn't stay long on the platform. I just get the information and then I went back on the boat.
Okay. And when you were providing transportation, as you say, because you're a faster boat, to various divers or various people, all of your crew, the remaining 5 members of crew, were always on the vessel with you?
Yes, they were.
Okay, so that's it. Now, you mentioned there being a larger Coast Guard vessel somewhere in the vicinity.
Yes.
Okay. And you said it was one of the Diamond 50-meter vessels.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said that that vessel was too big to come in where you were?
I believe that would have been the reason, yeah.
Okay. Well, if I told you that oil tankers come into that area, you would think that a 50-meter would be able to come in too, yeah?
Well, I guess. Yeah.
You guess? Okay. That 50-meter vessel, whatever its name is, did it not have a small boat moving from that vessel and in various areas around the water as well?
No, I don't think so. No.
Was there any other Coast Guard vessel in the water when you were there, leading seaman?
No.
You're certain?
Yes.
Okay. So the only time that you can't account for is when you return to base, to Stobbles, to collect the dive team.
Yes.
And all your 6 members went with you?
Yes.
And you're not able to say what happened in that period between when you left to collect the dive team and when you returned with the dive team?
I cannot, no.
Okay. Thank you very much, Leading Seaman. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Alfonso. Anyone else? Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Good afternoon. Kamini Prasad Maraj for LMCS.
Good afternoon.
The vessel that you would have left in the vicinity of the incident, of the place of incident, can you say what crew was present there?
I can't say what crew was present.
Or how many persons?
No.
Are you aware that there was a crew on board in the vessel?
Well, yeah, they were sailing the vessel, so they had a crew.
They had a crew. But you won't be able to say how many people?
No.
Is there a standard number that are used for those size boats?
Yes, but the number varies based on I don't know, different detachments. Some people who actually work on the boat, they might have something else to do at the time of duty.
Right.
So the number varies, so I can't say how many crew was on the boat.
Well, it's more than one and less than 50. So give us an idea of what the normal crew would be.
Around 20.
Right, thank you.
When you were present at the scene,
yes,
Bird 5, Bird 6, wherever you were, did you ever get a report about LMCS's workers becoming aggressive?
No.
Besides your duty operations officer, who would have given you instructions on that day?
Just them. Until LT Hargreaves.
Until Mr. Hargreaves at
he would have
around 9 p.m. that night?
Yeah, he would have become the on-scene commander, the person in charge.
When you arrive at the scene, and this would have been just after 4 or thereabout, did you and or your crew of 5, 6 in all, have your cell phones with you?
Yes, we had our cell phones there.
And at any point in time, did you and or any member of your crew use your cell phones?
If we used our phones?
Yeah.
Yes, that's how I was communicating with base with my phone.
Sorry?
I communicated with base with my phone.
With base?
With Sobers Bay, with operations.
With operations.
Yeah.
All right. Did anybody other than your base call you on your cell phone?
No.
No. All right. Would you be able to tell us if the crew on the vessel that was docked at the scene, whether or not it was armed, that crew was armed?
My crew?
No, the crew that was on the vessel that was docked, the big vessel, whatever the name of that big vessel.
Oh, they weren't docked, but
they weren't docked. They were patrolling, as I understand.
They're patrolling.
Yeah.
So, my apologies. So would you be able to say if that crew was armed?
I wouldn't be able to say, no.
Is it usual for that crew, for the crew to be armed?
Yes.
All right. Your attire on the day at the time of the incident, could you describe how you were dressed?
In
the clothes that you were wearing?
In Coast Guard uniform, which is a blue shirt, blue pants, black boots, a black life jacket, and a hat.
All right. Was there anyone dressed in wetsuit on your crew?
No.
No. Mr. Commissioner, I believe this is all that I would have.
Thank you, Ms. Purcell-Maraj. Mr. Peterson.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
I ask through you, but I make it public, that we will be writing to your officer, Mr. Commander Isaac, asking for all of the logs that were relevant for that day and for him to produce them. You might take that message back with you when you go, please. Okay. But he shall be receiving a letter from me in due course in relation to that. I think Mr. Wilson might have a question for you.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It didn't come out powerfully what your actions were the first time around. I heard that you went quayside and you met with a supervisor, but I'm not clear or powerfully like what that coordination was like. What actions were you given once you stepped on, stepped off the first time around before you headed back up to Stobbles?
When I got there, I stepped off the platform and I stepped on the platform, and spoke to the supervisor. He told me what actually happened. At that time, I called my operations department and told them what he related to me. And after that, I got back on the boat, and as I said, there were divers trying to make rescue efforts, and I was trying to help them in any way I could. They were bringing people.
Just let me interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt you. So divers in the water, and you're moving a vessel around with divers in the water?
No, not where they were.
Okay.
I was a good way off from them.
No problem.
A safe distance.
Okay. So that's what I'm trying to get in terms of who was coordinating your activity and what really was your activity. You was just jogging around the facility, just looking for survivors in the water.
No, I wasn't actually looking for survivors in the water. I was just off of the platform, a good way off, and they would say...
Who would say?
I can't remember who would say, but they would say like they'd have people coming across from land.
Okay.
As I can recall, first time we went was for 2 divers.
So then again, sorry to disturb you, that's where I'm trying to get. Who is coordinating that? It have 2 divers on land to the...
It was someone from on the platform.
Okay, so you just deem that as somebody, or you assume it was somebody from Paria?
As I say, I can't say exactly who's from Paria or not.
No problem.
I just went down there, I saw people there.
All right, so sorry to disturb that. So your activity is going on now, ferrying people back and forth from what else? Anything else?
Not exactly back and forth, just 2. I didn't take back anyone.
All right, no problem. Well, thanks for that. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, can I just understand it? When you attended, at the point in time when you attended, you told us that at that stage, all you knew were that there were a number of divers who were missing.
Yes.
You didn't effect any search on arrival of the waters around the berth?
No, I didn't.
No. Was that because it was believed by then that the divers were in the pipe?
I believe so, yes.
And indeed, whilst you were there, one of them came out of the pipe?
Yes.
Yes, all right, thank you. Well, I suppose this. The reason why you were dispatched to come back to your HQ and collect 10 divers was in the hope that they might have been able to effect a rescue?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, does anybody have anything arising from that? No, thank you very much. Mr. Maharaj?
2 questions.
Of course.
Yes. Do you know who was in charge of that large Coast Guard boat that was outside?
No, I don't know.
Were you in communication with that person at all?
No, I wasn't in communication.
And you would not be able to say, whilst you were away, whether anyone from that boat, Coast Guard persons from that boat, went on boat 6?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming. Please ask your senior officer, Mr. Isaac, to find out his logs. He'll be receiving a letter from me later today, all right? Okay. That we want these logs. So I'd be grateful. Are you going back to your office now?
No, I'm not going back to
the office. You have a day off?
Yes.
All right. Is that because of us?
Basically, yes.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day off. Tell him tomorrow, but I suspect he'll have had a letter before then. Thank you very much indeed for coming. Free to go.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the position is this. Mr. Hargreaves is going to be giving evidence from Barbados. Yes, he is in Barbados. We have arranged for him to have a video link at 2:30 today. So what I suggest we do is that we will rise now. We will come back shortly before 2:30 in the hope that we can have a video link set up for him. And then after him, we'll have Rolf Seals from Kenson. I mentioned Mr. Pegas, notwithstanding my instruction that he should provide his statement by midday on Friday. Apparently it arrived at Saturday night. Anyway, he will be giving his evidence after Mr. Hargreaves. We will conclude then today, all right?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Saturday night or Friday night?
Friday night.
Right, and we did provide an explanation. He was offshore on Friday, so unavoidably we could not have done it.
I know.
Okay, much
well, you've only had 7 months. Never mind.
Actually, no. He was notified in late October, if I may.
No, I struggle to understand why everybody seems to be completely ignorant of an inquiry taking place. Your president announced back in March of this year that there would be a public inquiry, and nobody does anything? Are you waiting for us to say, please make a statement, please come and join us? We did say that, but I said it myself back in August. Nothing happens. Anyway, it is what it is. We have it now, and he will give his evidence this afternoon. Whatever time it is, he will be giving his evidence this afternoon.
For sure, yes.
Thank you very much. So we'll adjourn now. We will resume literally a couple of moments before past. I hope that we can have a prompt start at 2:30. Thank you very much indeed.